Chad disappeared.
Maybe
We are live now. Oh, there's Chad. Hi.
We're live.
Yeah. Petty says, "What's up, fam?" Well, this is the fam right here. For people who don't know, PC, Brian, and Chad. Most people don't know Chad. Chad, introduce yourself.
My name is Chad Mueller. I'm up in Canada, and I am part of the B.Friendly squad. I'm the creative director, the guy that is behind the scenes creating.
That we would be struggling a lot without.
Exactly. Most people don't know Chad, but again, Chad headed our robust team of content creators at the games, and he did a great job with that. It was his first games. Chad, how was your first games in person?
Yeah, I mean, it was amazing. It was an amazing experience. It was filled with like constant movement and constant doing all the things, and I had such a great time. So thank you guys. And I met some of the Be.Friendly fans. I was handing out stickers, showing up at the merch table. So I got a chance to kind of see the fans, and it was a pretty good experience. Won't forget that one.
Never forget your first games. Brian, your first games? What, 2016?
2016, the last year in Carson. I went out there with a college teammate of mine from my soccer team who helped get me into the sport, and my dad. We watched 98 hours of live CrossFit action that year because, like this year, a majority of the age group competition took place before the individual and team competitions began. So in that year, it was like Tuesday through Sunday, and this year was the same, Tuesday through Sunday, of plenty of CrossFit action to watch.
Yeah, and mine was 2017, first year in Madison. I went there up there as a judge. Second CrossFit event I ever judged was the CrossFit Games. The first one was the Midwest Regionals, which is a lot of people would say was in par with the games with the amount of talent that was there in 2017.
Central region?
Central, yeah.
Central
region,
East, maybe?
No,
I can't remember what it was that year.
It was in Nashville.
Yeah, they might have switched from to the smaller regions that time, so it was just Central, yeah.
I think the prior year it was up in Chicago, and I forgot what those were the super.
Well, that would have been in North. That would have been North Central, and the same time they had Central East. Because my first ever CrossFit competition was a 2014 North Central Regional. Kyle Kasperbauer was the big name there, and there was this guy named Bobby Noyce who had placed 7th in the Worldwide Open, but then he was stopped dead in his tracks by some strict handstand push-ups. And what I still contest is one of the, if not the most difficult workout I've seen at the semifinal or regional stage, which was a massive workout with bar facing burpees, front squats at 205 pounds, and strict handstand push-ups.
Yeah, that was actually the first time I watched a CrossFit event. Was that year in Chicago. I think Alex LaChance won that year, and Kelly Jackson finished third. And that's when they're both members of Gambit. Kelly Jackson obviously was one of the owners of Gambit, and LaChance was a training partner. And Gambit was literally 2 blocks away from where I lived. And when I was in Kuwait at the time watching, I'm like, that's going to be the CrossFit gym I go to when I move back. Oh, and it awesome. Ended up, I didn't end up going there until like 2019, even though I lived right down the street from it, because the girl I was dating at the time was too intimidated by the level of competition at that gym.
But the seed was planted. The seed was planted, and that's a good message for people in general to understand. Mm-hmm. Is that there may be times where you want to have an impact on someone close to you, a family member, a friend, a significant other, whatever, and you're hopeful that just by the way you live or the way that you talk about CrossFit or your lifestyle as a result of CrossFit, that they might pick up on that. But there's no timeline for it. You can start anytime, and if you continue to do that and live that out in your life, 4 or 5 years can go by, and boom, you might end up at that gym that you had that thought about.
Mm-hmm. And it was, and it's been home since. Before we start off, you just made a post. Actually, it was on Brian Friends and B.Friendly. It's a collaboration. Chad, I don't know if you can pull that up, but we are having a contest right now. Our friends from Box Basics, who were just amazingly just great supporters. We would not have been able to do the coverage without Box Basics and, of course, Paper Street Coffee. But Box Basics, if many of you don't know, you probably heard when you watched our recap shows or our morning shows, actually, when I was giving Con so much crap for not living in America. But today they're debuting a new Haze giveaway, Strike Movement. Brian, go ahead and talk some more about the Strike Movement we're talking about here, what this contest entails.
Yeah, I mean, like most people in CrossFit, it's important to me the shoe that I wear and that I can meet the demands of what CrossFit is. I personally usually want to check 4 boxes. I want to be able to run comfortably in it, fast and far. I want to be able to jump rope in it. If I can snatch and squat, maybe rope climb, throw in the mix. And as long as you can do all those things, it's good. I like a shoe that's relatively light with a more firm base and a flexible or wide toe box and feel otherwise. And last year at the games, thanks to Tyler Watkins and the fantasy game that we had done, Strike Movement partnered with him, and he got me a pair of Haze trainers. And I tried them out per Annie Sakamoto's recommendation. She said last year when she saw me taking them out of the box that they were the best shoes she'd ever worn. And obviously Annie Sakamoto's been doing this for as long as anybody, so I thought that was pretty high praise. I tried them out when I got home, and first week that I wore them, I tried every single one of those movements and several others, of course, and they were great. And so I've worn pretty much nothing else since. I think I wore that one pair of shoes all the way until like December, and then eventually was able to get some more. I just kept promoting them. I play disc golf in them. I coach in them. Go out with my friends in them. Stand all around all day at CrossFit competitions. They've served every purpose that I've needed, travel, whatever. And so here they got a new colorway. I think Jonne Koski was wearing these at the games, this colorway specifically. And I did a little close up of him when he was getting ready for the jump roping in the second to last event on Sunday. And they sent me a pair of them. They're super nice. They also got here super fast. One of the great things about Box Basics is that there's fast and free shipping within the United States, at least. And yeah, if you're looking to try these out, but don't necessarily want to pull the trigger on the full price up front the first time, take a chance, put your name in the giveaway drawing and see what happens. We'll draw one on Sunday or Monday.
Yeah. I really like that colorway. It's called the Windbreaker. It really, if you read the description of it, I guess it's kind of influenced by the beach. I mean, what better shoe to have before Labor Day? Because obviously you can still wear white before Labor Day. I don't even know if that's a real thing anymore. Is it? I don't know. I mean, I wear white after Labor Day all the time, but it's just a good color on me, I guess. But that's just a really clean look. I like the muted tones on that. It's just really neat. I'm looking forward to getting a pair myself. I know, Brian, you got yours, and literally that was shipped out, I think, yesterday, and you got it today. So it's amazing. Everyone I've talked about in terms of Box Basics, and granted, I know this sounds like an ad, but everyone I've talked to that ordered from Box Basics, they've gotten their shoes between 2 to 3 days, and it's free shipping. So, that's amazing, and they always have deals going on. But again, thanks to our friends at Box Basics. To be entered in this giveaway, either on Brian or B.Friendly's page, it's a collaboration. Like the post, and then tag a friend. Once you tag a friend, you also have to follow B.Friendly, Brian, and Box Basics, and tag a friend. And each time you enter a tag, it's another entry into the contest. On Monday, Brian will unveil who won the pair. So good luck to all those that are entering the contest. But this is something me and Brian discussed this in terms of our live shows, that we want to try to do a giveaway at each show. So hopefully, maybe not shoes, maybe some other stuff. I know reading some of the comments, people are talking about like our shirts. It might include B.Friendly merchandise and stuff like that. So, so that's something we intend on doing, is whenever we have these shows to have some giveaways as well. So, Brian, unless you got something to say, we'll just jump right into it.
I just want to say thanks to Box Basics for all their support during the games. It was massive that we had them there. And then also just want to remind people, if they're not doing already and you like the stuff that we're putting out, the easiest way to support us is on Patreon. So head over to the website and sign up for that. It doesn't cost too much. It helps us do what we want to do to try to continue to move this sport forward. So if you can, and you aren't already, head over to our Patreon and support what we got going
on. And Teddy just reminded me here too, we also have a weekly newsletter digest. If you don't mind, go ahead and subscribe to that as well. Basically, we're not trying, it's it's basically a recap of the week. Some of it'll be links to our articles and some other things, maybe some messages from Brian as well. So if you haven't been, if you have yet to register or subscribe to that B.Friendly digest, please, that'd be great. Another way you can support us. So moving on. Chad, is there anything we missed?
Doesn't want to be seen or heard.
He doesn't. Man of little words.
No. All good.
All right.
No,
so Brian,
did the housekeeping. Good job, guys.
Yeah, thanks. That was like 10 minutes of just housekeeping right there. Let's just jump right into it. Brian, you want to start with the women or the men?
Totally up to you. You guide the show. Basically,
let's start with
the rest
men.
Of the show. We're going to just look at the CrossFit Games, look at what happened, talk about athletes, workouts, any big picture stuff. I gave PC free reign. He can ask me anything he wants,
yes,
and I'll do my best to provide some insights based on my experience there and the thoughts that I've been directing towards what happened in the week since.
And it's just not me. He didn't give me free reign. He's given also the chat some free reign. So if you have some questions, drop it in there. Chad, I'm going to trust you to pull the best ones and throw them up there and have Brian answer some of those. So let's start off with the men because we just put out an article this morning about Jeffrey Adler. And I think it's a good segue. We can talk about the article and briefly talk about Adler and just work our way from there. How's that sound?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, look, winning the CrossFit Games is insanely difficult. And although there are tons and tons of different storylines and athletes that I would like to feature over time and dive into, I feel like the fact that we have two new champions this year in Laura Horvath and Jeffrey Adler is a good place to start. Jeff Adler's story has become more and more well-known over the last year or two, I would say, as he's, had some excellent performances at the top end of the sport, and people have been, drawing some light back to his origins, which is as a volunteer at the CrossFit Games, and then working his way up from, mid 4,000s to mid 2,000s into the hundreds, and eventually having two wins in the Open, 2021 and 2023. He's got at least two wins at semifinals the last 2 years now. He was, margins away from potentially winning at Rogue last year. He had 2 top 5 finishes at the Games coming in, and now he's the CrossFit Games champion. And you couple that with what happened this year in terms of the men's field. And we know that, what we saw from Justin Medeiros this season was a little different than what we've been used to the last 2 years. There's always this kind of question mark about Pat Vellner and how good is Pat Vellner? Can he win? Is he the one standing in his own way? And then lastly, Roman Khrennikov obviously breaking his foot on the last day prior to the last 2 tests, and this just massive unknown if Roman hadn't broken his foot, falling or jumping over that log onto the sandbag, would he have won the Games instead of Adler? Regardless, Adler's the guy that's on top, and as a competitor in any sport, you can't control the circumstances surrounding your competitors or really anything outside of your own control. And Adler, I believe, has put in the work over 7 consistent years, and that word consistent is important. We'll talk about some other athletes on both sides of the fence here that have had ups and downs over that same or similar period of time, and some of them in a much smaller time with their careers, with their performances, with the results. Adler has continually improved. He's continually gotten better. So I did this deep study of what really since he got to the Games in 2019, what the evolution of him as an athlete looks like, and why he was able to kind of navigate this, this men's field over the last couple of years and end up as the fittest man on earth this season.
Yeah. And I think that's the coolest thing about the article. I'm lucky because I usually get like the first look at it because I edit those before we put them up. But as I enjoy reading this. And then, obviously you make it so easy for me because there's really no corrections I have to make. Usually it's just some spelling or spacing or anything like that. But as I got towards the end of it, you have a little section there where you actually address, the whole Roman thing and then also Vellner. And I thought that was a really cool thing that you brought up. And those who watched the Buttery Bros documentary, which I know we're big fans of, and we'll talk about that later. It's amazing that they could put together almost a 2-hour movie out within 5 days. And it's high quality and it's free. That's the cool thing about it, is like the Buttery Bros do it for free. But towards the end of it, they talked to Rich Froning, and not to give any spoilers, but Rich Froning gives his opinion on his thoughts on what happened to Roman and whether there's an asterisk or whatever. I mean, the argument can be made every year about something but at the end of the day, you're there to compete, and it's the healthiest and fittest that survive at the end. And at the end of the day, Roman didn't make it, but he's so good that he still had a big enough lead that he finished third with getting last place in 2 events, which is, and then he created some moments there. I don't think Roman, I can't speak for Roman, but I would say that Roman, despite, it's not what he wanted, obviously not the result he wanted, but I think he gained some memories from that you can't take away and you can't repeat if,
it's interesting in the case of Roman because, last year following his debut live performance at the games, where he and Ricky obviously had they each had these incredible stories. I did an article, I think it was still when we were working for Morning Chalk Up, so probably none of you can read it, but it was on Ricky versus Roman, and kind of what their trajectories look like to end up on the podium last season. As Roman's continued to compete in more and more live events, he's continued to have one thing that regularly stands out as being a limitation in terms of his potential to win these high-level competitions against the best male CrossFitters in the world, and it's the ring muscle up. The thing that was just like so brutal about what happened on Sunday is that the storylines couldn't have been lining up better. Roman comes out and has finally a good performance on a ring muscle up workout. And it wasn't a win, but it was 4th place. And it's funny, you brought up Rich. I actually lost a bet to Rich on that. And if you didn't see the podcast he and I were doing at the Mayhem Lounge during the games, I think it was on, so that was Sunday morning. So Saturday night, we made a little bet based on how many points would come between Adler and Khrennikov in this workout. And I suggested that the margin would disappear and Adler would be in the lead by a small amount after this, which he was. And so there you have it. Roman seemingly solving the riddle of the ring muscle up finally in a major competition, and Adler taking over the lead by 2 points with 2 workouts to go is setting up for what could potentially be the most dramatic finish in CrossFit Games history on the men's side since 2010. And instead, we don't get that because of what happened with Roman. We get this different storyline that you're alluding to. So I think that, Roman, he made it very clear. I think that what his persona, the demeanor, the way he represented himself on and off the floor in the interviews and whatever over the course of Sunday in particular, probably redirected the Spirit of the Games award in his direction. I'm sure that they had some other people in mind, and usually it goes to someone who's been around quite a bit longer, but he comported himself extremely well. But he also made it very clear that he has one goal, and his goal is to be on the top spot of the podium. He doesn't care who's there. He doesn't care who's coming. He doesn't care who's not there. That's where he wants to be. And so, I think that we can expect more of the same from Roman throughout this year, where we're going to get those little posts that say, "I'm ready, I'm coming," and like all this other stuff that he likes to put out. And he will, use this as added fuel to his fire to achieve his ultimate goal in this sport.
Yeah, I'm hoping. Obviously, our thoughts go out to Roman, and hopefully he can be healthy and be back to 100%. So I don't know what that means for Rogue or any of the other future competitions, but in either way, thoughts are going out to him. The other person you mentioned in our article and who is the runner-up is Patrick Vellner. What does displacing for Vellner, where does that go in terms of the legacy of Patrick Vellner? Once again, he came up short. Is this person doomed? Is Patrick doomed never to win the games?
Oh my goodness. I mean, you have to ask that question, right? And it's hard to say.
You gave me free reign.
No, I mean, and you, as anyone who's paying attention to this sport, you have to ask that question of Vellner. And, the funny thing is that I thought after 2021 that his case was sealed. It was like, nope, this was the chance. Medeiros hadn't won yet. There was an opportunity. And I thought Vellner had finally the opportunity to do it in 2021. He didn't get it done. Last year was a step backwards. And he was great this year. I mean, he came within 2 reps of winning the Rogue Invitational. He wins his semifinal in a pretty impressive fashion, despite not the perfect run out there. And he, once again, I was curious what would happen this season. In fact, if as Chad was scrolling through some of the articles there a few weeks before the games, I had this premonition that maybe there wouldn't be swimming at the games because of a few different factors. And I actually had Barkley Dale, who wrote a bunch for us in the lead up to and during the games. He wrote some really good stuff. study 5 years, which happened to be the 5 years that Vellner's competed, 16, 17, 18, 21, 22, canceling 2019 and 2020 because they are difficult to study. And I was like, well, maybe Vellner's like averaging 2 spots better per year if there's no swim, but that wasn't actually the case. He only improved 1 spot over all 5 of those years combined without the swimming workout. And that's because he's already doing so well. There's not a lot of space to move up. In some of those cases, the only person ahead to use Matt Fraser, and he's ahead by so many points that take out the swimming workout, doesn't matter. But I thought this might be the chance for Vellner again. And I was cool that he's stuck with it, continued to stay at the top of the sport for 2 years longer than I thought was possible. And, when everything is said and done, he was going to podium this year, regardless of what happened to Roman. Like, even if Roman stayed healthy, competed, and ends up first or second along with Adler, Vellner's still on the podium again for the 5th time in his career. And 5 podiums is pretty rare in the sport of CrossFit. Additionally, he had some terrible mistakes in this weekend yet again. None more grave than the alpaca workout, and everyone probably knows what happened to him there. But he never gives up. He doesn't make excuses. He always goes out there and keeps performing. And like a lot of these guys do. Like, he didn't post those pictures of his finger during the competition, his fingers. Mm-hmm. And that was disgusting. And I can't even imagine doing 8 more tests with my fingers like that.
Yeah. It's funny because every time I think of Vellner, I think of there was a post when we were at the morning chalk up, when one of our coworkers at the morning chalk up posted something after the games last year, basically announcing Patrick Vellner's retirement, and Vellner replied to it, and it's like, what? And then this is like the perfect every time, like ever since then, he's like podium after podium after podium for that guy. And he's just a consummate pro. He's a great representative, not just for the sport, but also but his country. And speaking of his country, we talked about his countrymen. Obviously, Roman was the only thing that stopped a sweep, a Canadian, or was it a maple syrup sweep of the podium.
Oh man!
So I know you like that.
Well, look, Brent Fikowski, very much like Pat Vellner, has had to answer these questions of, is age catching up with him? Is the field catching up with him? Is the totality of his career catching up with him? And will he ever be in the podium hunt again? And like Vellner, he's continued to find a way to keep himself relevant at the top of the men's field, regardless of who's in or out. He's more than often up there near the top. Last year, when he finished 16th, those concerns started to amplify. He comes back and has another solid qualifying stage of the games. As long as the competition's taking place in person, he's always a threat in that regional semifinal sanctional style format. 3 days of competition, 7 to 10 tests. He's exceptional. Most of the stuff, in the gym, so to speak, not that outside the box, but at the games, he also has this incredible resume. And I think that he really has adopted this mentality over the last couple of years of, training and competing as often as I can, but making sure that never puts me at a massive setback. And it was kind of what I was alluding to with Jeff Adler. And I think that all athletes who aspire to be great in this sport over a long period of time need to learn from these guys. More, people say the more is not better. Like, you have to make sure that in a day, in a week, that you're constantly checking in with yourself. And if it is too much, that you just back off for a small period of time, so that you don't have to, or aren't forced to back off for a large period of time. And Fikowski's figured out how to navigate that year after year after year. Here he is once again in 4th place. And I know that I saw at least that there were some people speculating about whether Brent might have kind of mailed in the last workout a little bit, so that Roman could still stay on the podium. I haven't asked him. Probably won't ask him. If he chooses to talk about it, he will. But I think Brent is a competitor. I think he respects all his competitors well. I haven't done as deep of a study of this as I would like to, but lunging workouts in the general, with the overhead lunge especially, he's had some bobbles over the years on those. So. And it's also the last event of the weekend. It's cool seeing some of the athlete reflections on Instagram now, where people are talking about the reality of what it is to compete at the CrossFit Games. Some of them make it look so easy. And some of us take for granted, oh, here they go again. They're doing this now, that now, whatever. It's like, no, it all adds up. And, Echo Bike and Thruster are no throwaways in terms of a buy-in to a heavy over at lunch to the finish. And just because there are a few people like Olivia Kerstead or Dallin Pepper that made that look relatively easy, doesn't mean that it is for all the guys out there. So did Brent do that? I'm not sure. But I think that either way, what we should be acknowledging is the fact that he went back to the drawing board after clearly being disappointed last year and parlayed his work this year into yet another successful finish at the CrossFit Games.
And I think this year, unlike the past couple of years, we never questioned his health. He actually looked very healthy coming in. I know he's said on record many times where, he's like, I wasn't hurt. It was just came down to performance. But this year, just looking at some of the competitions, especially we saw a really good version of him at semifinals. And I asked him after semifinals that you look really healthy and in a good place. And he said he is. And we kind of saw that at the games. And I don't know. It's just really cool to see. And, someone in the comments mentions not to talk about age, but, the truth of the matter is Koski and Vellner are getting up there in age. But the thing is, they're performing at such a high level. So age really isn't bothering them as much as people would say it is. But I don't know. Regardless, you mentioned something about the field catching up. So we're going to skip. Not really skip around. We talked about the top four, but do you think the field catching up is the reason why Justin Medeiros finished 13th, or are there other factors involved?
I guess I'll just say, because I've been reading some of the comments there, yeah. And I have had very little to no time to digest any content that's been being put out regarding the CrossFit Games. During the week, I can't keep up with the stuff that the guys are putting out, the podcast and the everything else. I'm just doing the work. And in the time since then, I've mostly also been focusing on my own reflections, preparation, writing, evaluation, and other things that I'm preparing for other things that I have coming up. So if some of the stuff that I talk about has already been said or mentioned by the athlete somewhere, I apologize.
Yeah.
And you feel free to fill me in on that. As far as Medeiros goes, I don't want to say anything for sure because I don't know, but from watching him on the pig chipper, onward, basically any time that the workouts is demanded, something difficult with a high heart rate, it looked like he wasn't able to breathe as well as I'm used to seeing him breathe. He was bent over. He just looked uncomfortable. He didn't look like his normal self. And my mind immediately goes to the bike race and the crashes that he took, which, on a course like that, we can't see everything that's going on for every athlete for the entirety of the ride, but I think he took at least 2 pretty severe falls during the inverted medley. And that evening he had his shirt off and we could see the marks on his chest. Yeah. It looked like he fell on his handlebars or something like that. And my instinct, based on watching him compete for the last 3 seasons at the highest level of the sport, and then watching him compete for the next 3 days, is that something was limiting his breathing. Whether it was a broken rib, something with his lung, or the strained oblique, I'm not sure, but it looked different. It reminded me of Chandler Smith at Granite Games 2 years ago. I'm watching this guy compete and I'm saying to myself, I don't know what's going on. If anything that doesn't look like Chandler Smith that I'm used to watching out there. And that's how I felt watching Medeiros in a variety, majority of the workouts this weekend. And if you look at his performances, he started the weekend with his 2 worst finishes ever at the CrossFit Games. And that the bike is the bike. If you have some crashes, if you're not great at handling the bike, so be it. We've seen, Pat Vellner was 2 spots better than them on this workout and worked his way all the way up to 2nd overall by the end of the weekend. But he comes back with a 37th place on a workout that is really about fitness. You move the pig, you do some chest to bars, toes to bars, wall balls, and you come back down. And this is a workout that you would think, he won the down and back chipper at semifinals in the world, I think, and there's no reason that he wouldn't do well on those on a workout like this, other than, obviously that workout's gonna be very difficult if you're struggling to breathe. So, and then he had some good performances, 2nd, 7th, 3rd is great. He had a bad finish on Helena. And this was something that was like, that was
surprising. Right. Yeah, that was very surprising.
That's the next workout where I was watching and I'm like, something's off. And I didn't know if it was the opening and closing of the dumbbell snatch and the opening and closing of the bar muscle up that was, again, maybe affecting that midsection, whether it was a rib, was a lung, something like that. I don't think he's a guy who wants to make excuses, but if you take some hard falls and you're struggling to breathe in on these demanding workouts, that's a challenge for anyone to overcome. And there's just, I'd say those 2 workouts, and maybe the intervals were the 3 workouts where I was watching him and I was saying, like, something's off. He's not breathing right. He had middle teen finishes on the run and the lift. That's okay. And then he finished strong, 6.93 on the last 3 workouts. So I don't know. Like I said, maybe he'll open up about something at some point with regards to that. But in the meantime, all we can really do is speculate. And I think some of the people have even mentioned it here prior to me saying it, is that it seems like something that happened during the bike race affected his ability to perform or compete at the level that he's used to. Yeah, that we're used to seeing him at.
Yeah, it looked like Sunday looked like the Justin we're used to seeing. Like you said, fishing we finished with a 6th and 9th and 3rd. I mean, that's more akin to what we're used to seeing him throughout a competition. So we don't know. Hopefully we'll find out. I mean, obviously he's the 2-time defending road champion. So hopefully we'll see him there, and maybe he can defend that title as well. Let's jump back up. We mentioned we talked about Fikowski, but there's a person just nipping at his heel 3 points behind him, who a lot of people compare Fikowski to, and that's Dallin Pepper. And I don't think either one of us were really surprised by this performance. I believe both of us had him in our top 10. I think you even had him a little bit higher. I think maybe I have to look at the power rankings, but a 5th place finish by, someone that you've known for a while. You've seen train. 21 years old.
Yeah, Dallin Pepper continues to be the person who is like kind of paving the way in terms of what's possible for successful male teenage athletes at the games, parlaying that talent into the individual elite or open division. I actually picked him in the top 10 last year in his rookie season. It was my one bold pick for the games last year. It didn't pan out, even though he had a decent, rookie finish of 19th. And I think I picked him 7th or 8th again this year. Obviously he did slightly better than that, which is great. And if you just kind of look, the thing that I really like about Dallin Pepper is, he's pretty good at everything, and he's really good at a couple things. Mm-hmm. And when I finally saw the workouts for Sunday afternoon, I was like, well, Dallin might win that last workout. And, but that's in a vacuum. You still have to remember what we talked about, is that was workout 12. That was day 4. And although he has 3 championships to his name in the teenage division, he's yet to do something like that at the individual elite division against the top men from all over the world. The fact that he still had the capacity to win that workout, reminder, he also had the best time in the world on the final workout of semifinals this year, is like, that's a characteristic that I think is critical to winning at the CrossFit Games, or to podiuming at the CrossFit Games, is that you have to be able to perform on the last day. I actually have an article that will be coming out within the next 24 hours about Laura Horvath as well. And in that article, I do several studies about the best athletes in the world. And one of them is a look at championship performances over the last 3 tests of the CrossFit Games for the last 12 years. And when you look at Dallin Pepper, 7th, 5th, and 1st on the last 3 tests, in fact, 5th, 8th, 7th, 5th, 1st on the last 5 tests, those are the types of excellent performances late in the weekend at the CrossFit Games that are required of someone who wants to win the CrossFit Games. And I know that's something that's, in the line of vision for Dallin at some point in his career. So those, that is really, really a key thing for me. And then on the other side, when you're looking at Dallin Pepper, you see the 25th place finish there in the cross country 5K and the 29th in the ski bag. It's only the only 2 finishes I would say the top 20 for him. The running is something that he's certainly been working on, and I think he'll continue to work on. He's a big guy, for a young guy, is very big, 215, 220, something like that. That can be advantageous in running for some. We've seen, like Yellow Jose, for example, who I'm sure we'll talk about as well. But it's also a lot of weight to move around the track for that much time. And the ski bag is an interesting one, and I'll be curious to see if much in the way that he went back and attacked the D ball after that kept him out of the games 3 seasons ago now over at the West Coast Classic, if the sandbag and doing maybe some squatting, some different variety of things with the sandbag is something that he's able to improve on over the course of the next 12 months.
Yeah. The next guy I want to talk to is the guy many people don't talk about, and he's probably the owner of the most first day leader jerseys in the history of CrossFit, and that's Jonne Koski, who a sixth place finish. I think that's outstanding for him, and I think what he showed is a different level of fitness this year than we're used to seeing from him. Because, like I said before, like I alluded to, this guy normally it's a swim event or some type of test of some type of endurance test, and he usually wins those. This year he did the same, led off with the bike, won that pretty handily, but then he stuck around, and you look at some of these other finishes he had a second in the interval workout, and then he finished the final day a second, a third, and a fourth. I mean, how impressed were you by Jonne Koski this past weekend?
Yeah, I think Jonne Koski gets it's an interesting case study. He gets extra recognition because he's so good at the stuff that usually shows up early. So he has those leader jerseys, whereas there are men like Vellner who's never worn the leader jersey because the things that he are best at don't show up as test 1 or 2 at the games. And then, but on the other side of that is I think sometimes people just put Jonne Koski in this box of being a great swimmer and biker and can't do very much else, which is also not true.
Yeah.
Jonne has shown over the course of his career, which even though he hasn't been at the games every year, is just as long as BKG and Noah Olsen and Cole Sager. I'm pretty sure this is 9 years for him at the games.
Yeah, next year will be 10, and he's only 28 years old because he started doing this, I believe, 19. He was 19 years old.
Yeah. Yeah, and he has several top 10 finishes. I think 6 ties the best of his career for all-time finishes. Just to verify that. But he's great at many things, and I think that those who are aware of his, he was also 6th in 2021, 7th in 2020, 9th in 2017 and 2015. So 5 top 10 finishes at this point in his career. It's an excellent resume. Yeah. And he has that when he's healthy, which has been the problem for him in his career, unlike some of these other guys that we've talked about who have managed to stay healthy throughout the entirety of their carear. Since Kowski's been at the games, he's made it every year. Vellner's made it every year. BK 10, Noah 10, Sager 10, Jeff Adler, 2019 shows up. He's been there every time since. Jonne's had these ups and downs. He's missed some seasons. He hasn't qualified, whatever else. But when he's there, he's a legitimate top 10 threat every year that he shows up. He's, like you said, he's still, I think like 27, 28 is actually kind of the prime year for CrossFit.
Yeah. Yep.
And he's right in that age. And we now see other guys like Vellner and Kowski who are 33 and 32. So he could still have 4 or 5 years to do this. Whereas some of these guys that already have 10 in a row, like Noah is moving on to the teams. Cole Sager is moving on to coach. I think BKG probably will give it another run. But Jonne Koski, probably still the second best guy from Europe. Lazar's starting to give a shout in that direction to ever compete at the CrossFit Games, and he is an easy guy to sleep on. I think I had him just outside the top 10 this year, maybe like 11th, but he was healthy. He was good. Many, many top 10 finishes, and that's what it takes.
Yeah, I guess.
Plus great shoes.
Huh? Oh yeah, he's a great shoes. Another plug. Thanks. He's a fellow Strike Movement sponsored athlete. But Lazar's only 1 year younger than he is. So I mean, obviously Jonne's got a little bit more miles, but like I said, I think those injuries could benefit him because he's had some. He does, even though he's been competing for so long. It's almost, I compare it to kind of like a running back or someone that takes a year off from injury or whatever, and they come back the next year and they just needed that year of rest or whatever. And I think Koski, who had some health issues last year, it looked like the best version of him, and it kind of showed. I think his worst finish was he had 2 finishes in the 20th, and that besides that, everything else was like top 16, if not better. So that's pretty impressive. Let's talk about health again. We finally got to see a healthy Chandler Smith, at least as healthy as Chandler can be, because obviously he was dealing with a hand issue all year, breaking a bone in his hand. But yeah, I mean, how impressive were you to finally see Chandler make a cut and perform under the lights?
Yeah, I thought this was, I think the way the weekend worked out, if you just told Chandler, hey, you're going to have your first ever top 10 finish at the games, you're going to be 7th, he'd probably be like, Damn, that's awesome. I love that. The way that it worked out, I feel like he might have left wanting a little more. Like he was in the hunt for the podium for a majority of the weekend. And unlike some of those other athletes that you talked about, he had his worst performances towards the back half of the weekend. I'm not sure what contributed to that. If his body was breaking down, if the wrist was bothering him, or if those just weren't the best tests for him. But when I'm thinking about Chandler Smith as an athlete overall, and by the way, don't forget he was second place at Rogue last year. Like he has shown the ability to be, duking it out with some of these guys that we consider perennial podium athletes. The workouts that I really was impressed by were the inverted medley because of what you said with his hand and just the incredible amount of demand that's required in the wrist there, and then the 5K run. Seventh place on that, which is probably not the workout that you would expect him to have a top 10 or top 7 finish on. But I think that, Chandler's been doing this a long time. It's actually funny. My brother was watching on ESPN on Saturday night when he was lifting, and he's like, man, that black guy, his form is not the best, but he is so damn strong. And I'm like, yeah, that's Chandler Smith. And so, we wouldn't be, surprised by him putting up a good total, but the fact that his running was actually a better placement against the field than his lifting speaks to me about the fact that Chandler has turned himself into a more well-rounded athlete, and that is potentially dangerous for the next couple of years if he continues to do this. Obviously, it looks like he's going to be going team next year, but if he goes team and never comes back to an individual, I think the fact that he was able to notch one top 10 finish in his career is appropriate. He's definitely good enough for that, and some other things have kept him out over the last couple of years. So very happy for him that he was able to finally kind of punch into the weight class that I consider him as amongst these men at the games.
Yeah, I'm not so surprised by Chandler doing well in that run, just because the whole time out on Invictus, and I'll give credit to his coach, Bickle, they created this thing called the Sunday Run Club or the Beach Run Club, and it's like him, Sam Dancer, every day they just run. And I think you kind of saw that with the Invictus athletes overall throughout the whole weekend. When it was a running event, they did very well in. But Chandler did something very, very odd in terms of his training the last month. He actually went to Denver and just did a training camp in Denver, whereas most people are going to warm weather places. Warm weather places are staying at home. He went to higher altitude, and I think it was to work on the running and to work on his aerobic capacity even more. And I think it kind of paid off, obviously, in that 5K, because he was in that. There was like 2 packs. There's the lead pack that had Vellner, Roman, Adler, and Hosta, and there was a second pack behind him, not too far behind him, but that included Chandler, and he just looked smooth. He looked really smooth running in that second pack. It included like Will Morad, and I think Lazar was in that pack, but they all stuck together, and I thought it was really smart, and I think he learned some cool stuff from those training camps. So I'll give him some credit and give some credit to his coach Bickle as well for that. So not too surprised by that.
And I think when you look at his entire weekend, though, the one thing that stands out, it doesn't look like a terrible finish, but there were only 20 athletes left in the field, was the 19th on the parallel bars, and that's the last place because the only person he beat is Roman, who was, fighting a different battle at that point. And I'd like to kind of go back and watch and see what happened to Chandler on that workout and which element was the sticking point for him.
Yeah, I was watching that. I was kind of surprised by that too, because you would think like a athlete of his build and his strength, the pulling shouldn't be that big of a factor, and obviously the double unders the heavy double unders. I don't know. Maybe it's something more on his grip, because there is a lot of grip, because obviously you have to grip the bars, the parallel bars and the dips. But yeah, I'm kind of interested in. And I was surprised, and I'm kind of interested to see what you find out on that. I'm going to group the next 2 guys together because they come from the Oceania and kind of save some time. Jay Crouch, this obviously someone that Con, if you watch the morning shows, Con was just out of his mind crazy for, and I think all of us were. And then Bailey Martin, who finished 12th. So these are 2 guys without much expectations coming in based on their history, well, especially for Jay. Bailey, it was his first time appearing there, and he was a rookie from New Zealand. So can you talk about their 2 performances?
Absolutely. I mean, Jay Crouch is, we have a lot more data points on Jay than Bailey. And I actually spoke to Bailey towards the end of the competition. I ran into him and his coach, Kiefer Lamy, in the athlete warm-up area. think maybe it was even post the entire competition, Sunday at some point, and just let him know I was so impressed with him. And I mean, I've spoken with Kiefer and Kotler throughout the weekend, and they were, of course, giving me a hard time about where I rank the underdogs athletes. But like, the reality of the situation is most rookies at the games finish in the bottom 15.
Yeah.
And there's always one or two that surprise. I picked Yellow Jose to be the rookie of the year for the men this year. He ends up with the 10th place finish, 2 spots ahead Bailey. I picked Bailey second or third from last amongst the whole men's field, just not knowing. He hasn't been in this environment. He hasn't come to the States to compete. It's a huge trip. It's a big commitment. It's very different. These are the best in the world, and I've never seen him go head to head with them. I've been watching him for a while, and 2 years ago I thought that he might make the games. He had one workout that basically kept him out as a strict handstand push-up workout, I think. And this year he was able to overcome that a little bit and he make his way to the games in a year where there was a lot of opportunity. No Ricky, no Khan. There's 2 or 3, no Royce Dunn, who went team. And now what we see is that this guy who, if all those people had competed, he might not have made the games at all. He shows up to the games and takes 12th. And to me, his 12th place, Jay's 8th place, the fact that Ricky's not there, the fact that Royce Dunn, who's had top 20 finishes at the games before, Justin's here, nice, is telling of a bigger picture. Is like, we need to reevaluate the distribution of CrossFit Games spots, because right now, and by the way, out on Barbell Spin right now, there is an article that's projecting forward to what that could potentially look like next year, given the rules from last year. But I'm hopeful that, as Dave Eubanks has talked about a couple of times, that there will be a reevaluation of that process, so that if it is the mission of CrossFit to have that system with the intent of distributing game spots based on ability, based on where the most talented athletes in the world are at in the season that's taking place. And everyone knows I have some ideas and some thoughts about that, and we've written about it and we've talked about it. Maybe we'll get invited into those conversations at some point. That the men in Oceania are actually outperforming the women in Oceania. And that has been, the opposite of that has been true for years and years and years, which is the reason why it's important to recognize that from one year to the next, there's no guarantees based on what happens. That doesn't mean we can't learn from those things, but I think that we need to explore the possibility of having some kind of hybrid system that recognizes the talent pool in a specific region versus the rest of the regions now, and has some evaluative context to put it in based on past performances. So that's a different conversation. But what Jay and Bailey did at the games this year, keeping in mind who wasn't there, is just another flag kind of in the camp of the people who want to say, is this the best system for distribution of game spots?
It'll be interesting to see that. See if that happens. And again, if we're part of those conversations. One thing I did want to point out is their ages. That has to bode very, very, very good for the Oceania region, because, we're used to seeing, like Con Porter, James Newberry, Royce Dunn, who, they're great athletes. They've been great ambassadors for Australia and the Oceania region. But now we're starting to see this next generation come in. And that's what you want to see in CrossFit, especially in the sport of CrossFit, is the growth, kind of like a farm system moving in to kind of replace. And to see 2 young athletes. Now, obviously, Jay's been around for a while, but someone like Bailey, who's been right on the cusp. And there's other athletes in the Oceania region I know that we have our eyes on. But it's just really cool to see that 2 young representatives coming out of that region. And hopefully, Jay's already shown it that he's been here before, and hopefully Bailey can continue to do that as well.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to omit him, but Baden Brown chose not to compete this year as well. Another big name and successful athlete out of that region on the men's side. So that the landscape of what it could look like in Oceania for the men next year is quite intimidating. Yes, or has the potential to be, at least. And then to this other point that you're talking about, this is something that young athletes in this sport, some of them just have it. It's in their DNA, it's in their personality, and others need to learn it over time, is how to present yourself in front of a camera and how to, have some energy, have some personality, give the people, because what you do on the competition floor is great. And that, and for some it can speak, volumes. But if you couple that with an engaging personality, now you have someone that people can really rally around and get behind. And we've seen that with, variety of different athletes over the years. And I would say for Jay Crouch and Bailey Martin, if they have the opportunity this year, go on some podcasts, take a little risk in your next interview, open up a little bit, smile, do these types of things that will help people, appreciate the person alongside the athlete.
I definitely agree. And hopefully we can get them on maybe at some point and talk to them. I've had a pleasure of talking to Bailey a couple times during the weekend, and he's just a pleasant kid, and has a really bright future. I know. Again, Kotler's in the chat, but also his coach Kiefer. They're just amazed by them. In between those two, we have a group of Europeans, two well known, and one who you thought, and we'll talk about this later on in terms of awarding of the Rookie of the Year. But we have Lazar, Jelle Hosta, and BKG. Just some different performances all together. For varying different types of reasons. I mean, obviously BKG, we'll talk about his injury and what he posted, but Lazar and Hosta, I mean, how would you characterize their performance over the week, individually and as a group, in terms of being Europeans?
Yeah, I mean, we'll start with Lazar. He finished in the top 10 for the third straight year.
Yep.
That's, we were just talking about with Jonne Koski is, when you start stringing together multiple top 10 finishes, even if they're not top fives necessarily, it's really difficult to do. It's really difficult to do it in consecutive years. Obviously, Lazar had a wild season from a good performance at the games last year to an injury at Rogue to a kind of a nightmare at Dubai, winning the European semifinal. And then I would say just kind of a as expected finish at the games, but it wasn't the straightforward path that we might have expected him to have. I think he was involved in some of those crashes, but one, if not both, with Justin during the bike race. And again, we don't know the outcome of that. We don't know how that affects him or not. Unlike Justin, he bounces back with a second place finish in Pig Chipper. And I think that for Lazar, one of the biggest points of growth for him over the past couple of years has been mentally, of experiencing something that doesn't go his way. He gets really frustrated by that. But how do you harness that into the next event? Because that's all that any of these athletes can do. Whatever happens in one is no bearing on two unless you let it. If it's physical, that's a different story, as we speculated with Justin. But that bounce back from him is what I was happy to see this year. He comes with 22nd, 18th, 19th, the next three events. This could be demoralizing. There's athletes that wouldn't recover from that. He's expecting top 10 finishes every time he takes the floor for the most part. And he's expecting to have a couple top two, wins or threes, fives. He's not getting that. He turns around and he doesn't let it affect him. He comes into Friday night, third place on a workout that should be great for him in Helen. Excellent. Fourth place on the 5K. Excellent. Sixth place on the intervals. Excellent. And so he was able to show me a resiliency this year that's, to me, speaks to him taking the next step forward mentally as a highly competitive athlete in the sport. I still think this is short of what he wanted. I think it's short of his ultimate potential, which I think that there is a chance in the next couple of years that he can push towards the top 5 and have the best finish of his career. Every spot in the top 10, it's a mammoth achievement to knock off some of these guys.
Yeah.
So I don't know that he can ever podium at the games. He certainly should have the belief that he can, but I think he's taken another step in the mental realm, which is important for him.
Yeah.
Jelle Hosta, we'll just go down the line. Jelle Hosta in 10th. I mean, quite frankly, this is about there's a little better finish than what I expected, but on the leaderboard, I think I picked him around 15th. But there is usually one person that sneaks into the top 10 as a rookie. He was able to do it this year just by a couple points, or actually was on a tie break, because we knew he was a guy who could potentially win on a workout or two.
Mm-hmm.
He got his win on the 5K run, and he did it in a very cool fashion, a veteran fashion, where he did not go out hot. He did not really dictate the pace for most of the run. He just stayed with the lead pack, and when he needed to, he accelerated and took the win. So, it's one thing to know you're the best runner in the field. It's another thing to find a way to show that and to not get caught up in a race. It's just, 16, 17 minutes of racing for these guys. You can make those mistakes. He didn't make it. He did that very, very well. You don't need, in this format of scoring, you don't need to win by a mile. An inch is as good as a mile. And so he got the points. He also, I said this, I said this thing leading into the games that if there was a horizontal displacement of an odd object, that he was likely to do well. Now, obviously, there's variables in that. You could have a horizontal displacement of an odd object, like even take strongman sphere, that's coupled with one gymnastics movement. And if you can't do the gymnastics movement, it doesn't matter how well you move the strongman implements. But he did have third place on muscle up logs, and I thought that was pretty cool. By the way, I would have named that workout muscle up bags, because I thought the bags were way more critical than the logs. But bring muscle ups in sets of 7 for a guy that's maybe the tallest in the field. Doesn't look great on paper, but he manhandled those sandbags, threw him over the log with ease, and obviously his height is a factor there. So it's nice to see some of those top end finishes. 4th place on ski bag. Once again, odd object, moving it across the floor. This time he has to squat it. Machine work, very good. 6th place on the bike. So he was good at the stuff we expected him to be good at. And we know that if you have top end performances on enough workouts, you can find yourself with a pretty good result by the end of the weekend. If you're a big fan of Yellow Hoste and you're looking at, well, what does he do to get better? You look at the pig chipper, 30th place, and you look at the parallel bar, 17th out of 20, really 17th out of 19. And then his Olympic lifting total near the back of the field. So he just needs to get a little bit stronger. And I think that there's an opportunity for that if he wants to, but pretty good performance overall either way.
Yeah. And then moving on to BKG. I was really excited for BKG coming into the games, and after the first couple events, I was like, oh no. I was really happy, the bike, and then the second event finished in 9th, and then just he seemed kind of off after that. And then if you look at his post, he has a 5 series post that kind of explained that he messed up his back prior, I think in camp, when he was down at camp at Virginia, when him and Heinrich and Hosta all came, not Hosta, but Jonne all went to Krypton and re-aggravated his back injury there, and looked like it kind of.
First of all, to Alyssa's comment there, this is BK's second finish outside of the top 10 in his CrossFit Games career. Yeah. He was in the 20s as a rookie, and then he had strung together top 10 finishes from 2015 all the way until this year. But this is basically a top 10 finish.
Yeah,
he had 710 points, tied on points with Yellow Hoste, and that's taking a 0 on the lifting total. If you look at the margins from 11th place, 710, all the way up to Fikowski in 4th place, that's 71 points. I think it's possible that he earned 71 points on Olympic lifting total if he's healthy, not to mention other points that he might have run. I think absent that injury, BKG could have podiumed this year. That's how fit he was. Obviously, injuries are a part of sport. There's nothing you can do about it. The fact that he continued to find a way to fight, the fact that the rules allowed him to find a way to fight, and by the way, that also applies to Roman, was critical, because a different set of rules might have forced these guys into a withdrawal situation. But the way that it was set up this year, that was not the case. Obviously, he asked before the Olympic total what was the minimum requirement, or that he was expected to do. You didn't have to lift every attempt if you didn't want to. You could accept your first one. He chose to do that and live to fight another day, despite being, I can't even imagine the pain that he was in. And he goes on to take 10th, middle of the pack, 4th place finish on the last day against these guys, and and then obviously 16th, and you can imagine that barbell was just a huge nightmare for him until final, given all the stuff he was going through. But BKG is a fighter. You can't make it 10 years in this sport if you're not. He is, he's one of the 10 fittest guys who's ever done this. I will be doing updated all-time rankings later this month, and you'll find him in the top 10 there for sure. So I think this performance, the result on the leaderboard doesn't speak to how fit he was. Everyone kind of knows that at this point. And, to me, BKG just continues to be a model of consistency for a CrossFit athlete at the top of this thing.
Yeah. In the absence of time, I'm just going to go we talked about basically the top 13 athletes here. We'll just look at the rest of them in terms of not individually, but any athletes that you want to highlight or stood out, good or bad, in the next, let's say the next 20. I'm going to throw a name out there. I'm sure you're going to want to talk about it. So let's start with Colton Mertens.
Yeah, I was just going to go down the list. I don't want to skip over Will Morad. I feel like people don't ever talk about him very much.
I agree. So let's just go down the list.
He was basically, what was he, 14th in 2014 at the games?
Yep. And then got misdiagnosed. Yep.
Wait, I think, is that exactly what he finished? 14th in 2014. He's still 14th in 2023.
Yep.
I mean, he hasn't had maybe the normal career that you'd have expected. He doesn't make it every year. He's not a big flashy athlete. The guy is so good and so impressive. And, you want to mention Colton Mertens, who's not he's the smallest guy out there. Will's not that much bigger than him.
Correct.
Like, this guy. So I just want to, I don't have anything specifically I want to say. I just don't want to overlook this as a pretty impressive feat. Look at him, 34 years old, with Jason Smith not being in the field. I think that was the oldest guy competing there this year. And then, we've often asked this question about what's possible on the men's side as the age goes up. 34th, he's 14. 34 years old, he's 14th place. Vellner's 33, he's second place. Koski's 32, he's fourth place. So pushing into your 30s, the answer is yes. As a male in this sport, it still can be done. So great weekend, great season for Will Moore. I'd love to see that.
I think you're showing him some love because he's an ex-college soccer player as well.
Yeah, of course. But yeah, I think. By the way, shout out, good work by Spencer Panchik to get into the top 20. Obviously, not having his brothers there this year, he was carrying the mantle as the only Panchik brother in the elite field. I think that, like Morad, a lot of people weren't sure if he would make the final cut, weren't giving him a lot of attention or notoriety. He was up there in third after day one, managed to hold on to that and get all the way to the final day, 17th place. So great weekend for Spencer, Nick Fowler, I think.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think that that him and Nick Fowler, being that team up between those two, that's going to end up being a really good coach-athlete relationship. There's probably going to be really good things we're going to see out of Spencer in the future.
And that does bring us to Colton Mertens as we're working our way down. I think I've already said it, but I think it's worth saying again, just completely blown away by Colton Mertens this year. The fact that he did have that diagnosis last January, that he wasn't sure if he'd be able to continue. I mean, he pulled out a Wadapalooza. He did a local competition just to see. It went all right, so he continued training. He's in the trenches every day. And we'll talk about the one woman that I know of who's still doing this. He works a full-time job.
Yeah.
And it's like, there are athletes in this sport that have said, you can't compete at the top end of this thing if you're doing a full-time job anymore. Well, Colton's doing that. He's fighting, he's against it in terms of his size. He's against it in terms of his work. He's against it in terms of this illness that he had. He had a fever on Saturday morning at semifinals. He still goes out and sets the world record on Linda. I mean, the guy is absolutely incredible. And when something comes out that you're like, what the heck? How is he going to throw a 200-pound sandbag over a log that's taller than him and then get up over it? No problem. The guy, he's never going to make an excuse. He's always going to find the way. And, there's a reason that people love him, because this guy should be motivating for every single person.
Yeah, he may never finish on the podium. And I think, ultimately that's the goal, but I think he'd be fine with that as long as he keeps showing people his work ethic. But I do see Colton Mertens in a near future being one of these athletes who is in contention for Spirit of the Games, because he just doesn't exemplify the spirit of the games. He exemplifies the spirit of CrossFit, I think, in terms of just being the average, not average, he's above average, but like you said, someone that works he doesn't just work a 9-to-5 job. He works it's just not a office job he's working. He's working a hard
job. It's like
job.
a 5 to 9 job.
Exactly.
5 a.m. to 9 p.m.
I mean, yeah. It's like anyone that's worked on a farm. It's not a 9-to-5, wear a suit, 2-hour lunch, dates. No, it's amazing what he does. Yeah, I mean, any athletes, I mean, that takes us to Nick Matthew and Oldest as well. Oldest is kind of like the European version of Colton in some ways. Great performance by him. Kind of one of those mayhem athletes that kind of just snuck in there. But he's obviously pretty fit. And then we get to the cut line. Some names in there in that cut line. Any names that stand out that didn't make that second cut?
Yeah, I think, Sam Cornway right off the bat was, he was about this rank. I think he was 21st 2 years ago in 2021, the last time we saw him compete there. He got off to a decent start, 19th on the bike, and like the bike is the bike. You're going to, I'm not putting too much stock into how well people did on that bike ride as an assessment of their overall weekend. So whatever. Comes back with a 7th on the pig chipper. We expected him to do well on that. He did well on a similar workout 2 years ago. 9th on the inverted medley. I thought he'd actually do a little better on that, considering how well he did on the handstand walk a couple years ago. But it's not a bad place to be. And then he took a couple of hits, you know, the alpaca redo and the redux. I don't know why everyone's calling it redo. And the sandbag squat. Like, those are workouts that I would expect him, or the ski bag, excuse me, to do a little bit better on than he did. And there's a million factors that could be in play here, you know, as we've seen with several other athletes. So don't exactly know, but that's where he kind of, in my opinion, lost it a little bit. And he didn't really get it back until, with the exception of the Olympic lifting total. Now, the workout before that, he takes a dead last. And the one before that, he takes a 29th. And it looked like his back was bothering him, and he couldn't even step up onto the stairs to finish that workout in the Coliseum. And then he comes back and snatches like 285 pounds. I literally could not believe what I was watching. So generally speaking, it wasn't the performance I expected in terms of the overall ranking, but it seems like something came up injury-wise that prevented him from maybe performing at his best on the last few tests.
I was really happy how the cuts kind of ended up, where we did get to see Braun and Jack Farlow kind of have one last stab at it under the lights. Often we criticize the cuts, like, oh, we don't see these athletes who, get to the big lifts or these specialties. And we actually got to see that with two athletes, and they had great moments. I mean, how Jack bounced back, the double, how he got out of the bottom of that clean was amazing.
Yeah, and I think that everyone knows this kid's incredibly strong, but just because you're strong doesn't mean that you're going to execute on a workout like that. 9 events deep, and in his case, it's going to be your last one. You only have 2 lifts each. You have to start with something heavy. You're forced to have about 5 minutes rest before you can touch the barbell again. Like, there's a lot of factors in play there. Obviously, they both came out of the first heat and had some impressive lifts, but this 396 clean and jerk is a record for a live CrossFit Games competition, and I'm so jealous of how easy it makes the jerk look.
Hey, Chad, come on. I want to ask you something, Chad. You got to see this live. Tell me your feelings during this lift. What kind of emotions were you going through?
So yeah, Jack is in my neighborhood, and I've seen him lift before, and he's a very quiet, strong dude. And yeah, that was like my first Coliseum experience, and just like seeing someone that like you could just tell I was watching him when he wasn't lifting, and he was prowling kind of like Tia a few years ago, just like a lion prowling the jungle, just back and forth. He seemed super amped up, but he was kind of holding it in. So like it was such a huge moment. Like, when people say the Coliseum's different, like that, for sure. Like, I'm like, yeah, you're right. Classic moment for Jack at such a young age. Pretty cool.
Yeah. And that's something he's never going to forget right there. And he's going to get better. Obviously, Chad, you get to see him just about every day. You get to know him pretty well, but I'm glad that, you got to see that and got to experience the stuff that a bunch of us who've been at the games, that's why I wanted to kind of ask you to get your take on that. All right, you can go now.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I'll stay for a bit.
Well, and here's the thing is, this event is probably going to change some things for him. This event on its own, like that performance,
viral moment.
It'll get, Morning Chaka put up a thing about Instagram followers, as they always do. He increased his Instagram following by like 90+%, and it probably had a lot to do with this lift. He's probably going to get some sponsors reaching out and some other things because of this lift. So, while Dave Castro mentions all these different reasons about why the cuts do exist, and while we did get to see, obviously, 700+ Olympic total from Jack, there were 2 other guys in Jason Hopper and Jake Douglas that also have 700+ pound Olympic lifting totals in their background that didn't get this opportunity, and that the crowd did not get to see lift.
Yeah. At the end of the day, you have to do what you have to do the right things to get to that I guess award or reward. Because I know just being in the back coaches area prior to this, that's what a lot of coaches were telling. At this time, someone like Jack, Braun, they knew they weren't moving on to the next cut. So they're just like, I'm going to go out there and have this moment. And you'll see that on the women's side as well. We'll talk about that when we get to that as well. So, just really good on Jack to kind of go out there and get that viral moment, because at the end of the day, you remember the podium, and then you remember these viral moments. And that's what I tell like some of my athletes, is just go out there and have fun and show people you're having fun, because who knows what might come out of it. And Jack definitely showed that, and much love to him. And I'm excited to see where his fitness goes from here. Obviously, we'll talk about this in the women's side, but they're building something special in your neck of the woods, Chad. And everyone talks about these camps, but I think there's a coach up in your neck of the woods that's not getting the credit he deserves, and the camp he has up there. And I think it's probably about time that we give them some due. And we'll talk about that when we talk about the other person in that camp. But another thing I want to bring up, and I enjoy doing this, is I want to bring up Ant Hayes.
Sure.
Haynes, he finished 30th. Literally showed up, 5 days before the games. And that's a huge achievement, because a lot of people would put him in dead last, just coming in. And he came in, he showed up, and he represented. And it was great to see that.
He put a post up on Instagram that said exactly that. He's like, I got an opportunity, and I could have turned it down because it was last minute. It's a lot of travel. It's whatever. He's like, and I'm glad I didn't. And I know that everyone was picking me last. And, but for me, it's like, I'm showing up here with a clean slate. I'm 1 of 40. I get a chance to go out there and throw down and see where the chips fall. And I mean, he had his worst performances right there at the end, 21st, 28th, 29th. He was actually, quite a few spots up higher than that previously. A couple 10th place finishes against this field is quite impressive. Pekka Redu and Helena, no easy workouts there. So great weekend for Ant. He also put another post up during the games. They didn't get the flag he necessarily wanted, because he wanted the Hong Kong one, but that CrossFit recognizes 4 different countries as one over there. And so he says, I'm representing more people than anyone this week, which is pretty cool.
He is. And, he's just a great ambassador for the sport. If you ever get a chance to talk to him or his brother or meet them, they're just great. On the other side, we briefly talked about this, but there are some names there. Jason Hopper, Cole Grieshaber, Cole Sager, Alex Vigneault. Where do these athletes go from here?
Really tough question. I think it's, for each of those guys, it's a little different. In the case of Cole Sager, I really embraced his last event there. I don't think maybe everyone realized that was going to be his last event. He was very emotional about it. I was grateful to be able to kind of give him a hug and thank him as he was walking off the floor at that time. But he's going to move on to coaching. I think he's going to be a very impactful coach for people, not just in terms of their performance, but in terms of being a great person.
Yeah.
As obviously his character is, as great of an athlete as it is, I think his character trumps that in spades. He's just one of the best guys I've ever met. And then, Vigneault also being a little bit older. I don't know. I think I wasn't really sure what to expect from Vigneault this year. And, Chad, thanks for tracking Cole down and getting this, man. This was really cool. So, I think Vigneault is maybe the most difficult answer of these 4 guys. And I think for Grieshaber and Jason Hopper, it's just back to the drawing board. I think in the case of both of them, they're young. In the case of both of them, they're incredibly talented. I don't think that this finish at the games is a perfect representation of their fitness overall. For Cole, it's 2 years in a row down here. Obviously, what he did at semifinals was phenomenal. 4th place in the West, beats Justin Medeiros. He was unable to back that up at the games. I was quite surprised by both of these finishes for these guys, but nothing is promised at the CrossFit Games. You have to earn it. And when I look at their event performances and I see them come out the gate 33rd and 34th, this, as we talked about with Lazar, like this can have an effect on people's psychology. And if you're not able to just push that out and move forward, then those things can start to spiral out of control. The same way that a couple good performances can create this momentum that might create more good performances, the opposite can happen. Hopper had this little like up and down, but 3 finishes in the 30s out of the first 6 tests is just not going to get it done. And I don't, and I think that he needs to probably go and assess where his, I haven't really spoken to him. I ran into him one time. I just gave him a hug and told him I loved him, and I'm sure I'll catch up with him at some point. But I think he needs to just get honest with himself and ask him was I able to put, the first event out of my mind for the second one, and the second one out of my mind for the third one, and go out there and execute? And what happens when there is a cut looming and you get, basically Jason wasn't great at manipulating the bike. He wasn't great on the pullovers. And then I don't know what happened to him on Helen, but it just looked like the life was sucked out of him. Like he didn't have that fight in him that you expect to see. And for Cole Griesaber, it just kind of went from, with the exception of the handstand workout, which he's, one of the best in the world at, everything else there was nothing like what we saw at semifinals. And so I'm forced to ask the same question. Is it, were you able to set aside the results and get ready for the next one, or were those results just starting to weigh in on the mind and prevent him from performing at the level that we've seen previously?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Again, we'll see a lot of these people athletes in the off season. It'll be interesting to see what changes they made, if any changes. It might just be something where they just move on. They just move on with what they're doing and just see if there's some type of change in the programming or what. But it'll be interesting to see. Let's jump over to the women's side. I think, again, it's just a lot of, the men's field was so crazy, but I think the women's field, the race, is just as crazy, if not crazier, in terms and exciting, if not. Just overall, your assessment of that overall, the women's field and just the particular race in the games.
Basically from the first workout, we had several athletes that were asserting themselves into the top 10, and many of them went on to have the best finish of their CrossFit Games career. And we thought that something like this could happen in the women's field. I was of the mind that Laura Horvath would run away with the title this year. There were a few other women that stepped up and performed better than I thought they would overall. She does get it done in the end, but there are a half a dozen women in this field that I think had really compelling results to the point of being threats for the podium in years to come.
Yeah, well, let's talk about Laura real briefly. I don't want you to get too into details because, again, like Brian said earlier, you have a story that's coming out tomorrow morning about Laura Horvath, and it's the longest article you've written since we started B.Friendly. And I've already edited like a quarter of it, and it's great. It's amazing stuff. So just briefly, just talk about Laura's performance, especially the front half versus the back half.
Well, that question gets into, some of the programming stuff that I think, some others like Bill and Chase and JR and Taylor have dove into a little bit. I haven't had a chance to watch those. I'd like to watch them sometime soon, but she had one bad performance. I would say one bad performance on the weekend. It was on the inverted medley, but it was a 27th. That was the only time we saw handstand push-ups show up. They were in the freestanding variety, which is better than a strict deficit wall facing, etc., that could show up. So, and she had 15th on Helena. Those, other than that, first, second, first, ninth in the first four tests. So she actually got off to a decent start relative to last year. The problem is that there was a couple other athletes, and specifically Alexis Raptis, who had 5 out of 6 top 5 finishes in the first 6 tests, and Emma Lawson, who were kind of keeping pace with her. Lawson continued that trajectory and had this, a good string of workouts in the middle. And it actually wasn't until the second to last workout that Laura took over the leader's jersey from her. So, like Patrick said, did a lot of work on this article about Laura Horvath. It's asking the question of whether she is the second fittest woman to ever compete in the sport of CrossFit.
Don't give it away. Oh, you're giving it away, Brian.
That's what the question's asking.
I know. It's a great question, by the way.
And in order to answer a question like that, I had to take a look at not just her career, but some other careers of the greats in this sport, and kind of put into context what she's been able to do over these 6 years of her CrossFit Games career so far. So I won't say too much about Laura now, because I've spent a few, several hours writing about it, and I hope that you guys will read that tomorrow.
It's definitely worth the read. I know that's kind of my job, is to be the hype man, but I haven't heard you. You're excited about most stuff you put out, but Chad will attest to this. When you sent us that text message, it's probably the most excitement we've seen you in a text in a long time. So I was really excited to read it as well. And yeah, it was a great job on that. You mentioned Emma. I mean, obviously we're going to talk about Emma. Moving on from Laura. Biggest question to her, and I don't know why this question's even brought up. I don't think you're one of these people, Brian, but a lot of people question Emma's strength. And I obviously think she can be stronger than where she's at right now. And looking at the Olympic total, she kind of proved that. A lot of people, I guess they just look at her slight build and her age and they don't think she's very strong. I mean, I've heard some people compare her to.
I think they look at the last 4 workouts from the games last year, and you saw 33rd on sandbag ladder. Obviously, the field gets smaller after that. 24th out of 30 on alpaca. No legless rope climb, so it really came down to the sled and the kettlebells. And she's towards the back of the field. 21st on back 9, another bottom 3rd finish on a strength test, and 14th on Jackie Pro, which is a power output on the rower and then the thrusters and your ability to perform there with a fast rate on the row. So those I think are the reasons why people would say maybe the strength isn't up to par for some of the top athletes in the sport. And when we're, coming into the Olympic lifting total that night, and I'm looking at the women in the field, I'm thinking to myself, this is it. Like, Laura's going to overtake her here. There's just, Laura's probably going to win this. And there are several strong athletes in the women's field that are going to steal points from her. And she was perfect. She hit all 4 lifts, 7th place on that workout. And that was the moment when she hit that last clean and jerk that I said, she actually has a chance to win. Up to that point, I still thought it was Laura going away. I thought that Laura would have this phenomenal, close to the weekend, maybe even stringing off 4 straight wins. I do think Laura could have won the last 4 workouts if she wanted to. I think she was embracing the moment, and the reality was setting in about what was about to happen as she was looking around in the Coliseum instead of picking up the bar to do her lunges. And we've seen Laura have just phenomenal finishes to the CrossFit Games before. Again, there'll be some details about that in the article tomorrow. And Lawson wasn't bad on the last day. I think she just happened to run into, a powerhouse. And, if anyone thinks Emma Lawson is not strong, they're mistaken. Can she get stronger? And specifically with some of the odd object stuff? Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And even then, like the odd object with the pig, she finished 15th. One thing I did notice, again, being down in the Coliseum in the warm-up area, is after that, the parallel bar pull-up, she came back. And if you watch the Buttery Bros video, you'll see some of the behind the scenes of that. She was really emotional. She knew that she pretty much lost the leader's jersey after that event. And she was very emotional about that. And I don't think that's a bad thing at all, because that just showed me that she wanted to hold on to that jersey and she expected to win. And at that young of an age, that's unbelievable. And then for her to also brush that aside, go out, finish 9th, and then also be very proud of herself that she finished 2nd. And she's proud of that achievement. It says a lot more about her maturity level at that age than I've ever seen in any other athlete, even close to that age. So I want to give her kudos for that. And that's definitely the heart of a future champion right there. And I don't know, Chad, if you have any insight in that with your relationship with her. But that was just something that really caught me behind the scenes, and that hopefully you guys will see if you watch the video, and then we'll probably get some further details, further video on that later on as Sevon puts out his behind the scenes.
Yeah, I think she has a huge runway, right? Like coming in 2nd in this soon in her career. I think it showed a lot. I think she's super mature beyond her years for sure. And I think just experience is going to help her over time. And so this year is going to be a huge momentum shift for her. It's tough when someone like Laura, she's a killer, right? And she had so much confidence after that big lift on Saturday that she pretty much walked in on Sunday and said, I'm going to win all this and I'm going to take it. And I think Emma probably felt that a little bit too. So, I mean, a good learning experience. And I imagine she is going to duke it out for the podium for the next X amount of years. It's going to be really exciting.
And that story that you told, Patrick, is also a good insight into this thing that we've been alluding to, which is the highs and lows emotionally that these athletes have to manage over the course of a competition. And in this case, over the course of an hour or two. is that, you know, because if you listen to her talk after the fact, she's like, this is amazing. I can't even believe I'm here in second. But 90 minutes before that, she's pissed that she's no longer in first, and she's emotional, and she's having to deal with that. And that these things, they're, you know, the young athletes, it's, you know, you don't know if you're going to be in these situations, and you don't know how you're going to respond to them. One of the things that I write about in that Horvath article is that in addition to being a great athlete, there's a skill of winning. And, you know, until someone wins, you don't know if they have that skill. And until you find yourself in that situation where you are winning and it's taken from you, you're not sure how you're going to respond to that. And so, you know, Lawson, within the course of 2 hours, we'll just call it, you know, loses that, feels sad, feels upset, feels frustrated, whatever. And then, you know, a couple hours later, she's out there and she's saying, I don't even know what to say. I'm so happy. This is incredible. I didn't know I would be here in second place. So it's just a little insight into that roller coaster that every one of these athletes has to learn how to manage.
Yeah. And I think what might have also helped her is that Tia immediately went to her, saw that she was distressed, went over there and spoke to her for a good 5 minutes. And I think, you know, Tia was someone that kind of went through something similar, you know, her first 2 years, you know, maybe different age, but she went over and just, I mean, again, I can't speak. I speak so highly of Tia, but she went over to an athlete who was hurting and said some great words to her. And I think that kind of maybe helped her out. But also, I also want to point out is like, there is a lot of, I guess, criticism, or there's some talk about like how some of these younger athletes, how they deal with pressure. And I think Emma, and I know she still has a lot of years to grow up, she might have cracked a code on this, because if I watch Emma and she seems like she's enjoying herself. You know, she's still a high school teenager and she's still enjoying those aspects. It's not always about training for her. She has a life. I think part of that also helps that she has her partner, Jack, her boyfriend, is joining her in this adventure as well. But, you know, she goes to prom, she does stuff, she goes on vacation, she does things with her family. And I think that's important for some of these younger athletes. And that Emma Lawson might have figured out how to do this. It's just a matter if you're willing to do it. So, yeah, that's all I really have to say about that. Again, let's move on, unless you guys have anything to say on that point. We'll move on to the fittest, not just the fittest mom, but the fittest American this year.
Yeah, and you mentioned this with regards to Colton Mertens, and you know, obviously we're going to talk about her athletic performance and fitness, but there's another person that could be a great candidate for Spirit of the Games any year she shows up there. Yeah, and it's, you know, it's the fact that she is just such a nice, kind, loving person. Sometimes it's like I don't also remember that she is a complete lethal weapon out there on the floor. And I would just say in general, since she's the first of the three to pop up here, that I definitely underestimated the women coming out of North America West this year. She comes in third, Alex Gazan comes in fifth, Katrin David-Jotter comes in seventh, and I thought that 9 of the top 10 spots at the games would be occupied by North America East women and European women, but they end up getting 3 spots here. So for the group as a whole, very, very well done. And for Ariel Lowen, I mean, this to me is the surprise of the entire weekend. Like, if you told me Jeff Adler was going to win the CrossFit Games, I would have said it's going to be hard, but I could see it happening. If you told me Ariel Lowen was going to finish on the podium, I would have said, I can't see how that's going to happen. And so then, you know, you're forced to, and I haven't had a chance to write about her yet. I would like to, but you just kind of sit back and look and you see, well, she never had a bad workout. Her worst workout was 17th, which is still in the top half and that was on ski bag. And the consistency she showed from beginning to end of this competition, while every other woman around her, especially the ones below her, were having some, you know, bad finishes paired with some great finishes. That stuff plays. And I didn't mention it when we were talking about Chandler Smith. He finished 7th at the games. He never had a finish better than 7th. Those were his best finishes. Consistency. So while we have oftentimes in the history of this sport spoken about people like Brent Fikowski who can have, you know, plethora of top 5s paired with some bottom finishes. Yellow Host is a good example of that. If you can manage to be consistent, to never have a bad performance on any of the workouts over the course of the test, that's also going to work out pretty well for you. And in the case of Ariel Lowen, to the point of standing on the podium, it's not that often in the women's field that there's an American woman on the podium. You know, this is Mal obviously did it last year. And prior to that, you got to go back to, I think, Julie Fouché. So it doesn't happen, which was in 2014. So very well done for Ariel Lowen. I would say the most surprisingly and pleasantly so performance a result of the weekend for me.
Yeah, and you actually got to meet her beforehand. She did something really different. We went to the Tier House on, was it Tuesday? Yeah, it was Tuesday. And yeah, you actually did a little bit of working out with her.
I did, and if you want to see what that workout is, you can go check out the August friendly WODs. I still am putting in the workouts that I do every time I do a workout, basically up there, unless I'm testing for something that's confidential. But she and her husband Dylan let me jump in with a workout they were doing. It was a rowing, running, bike erg workout. And they specifically had the bike at the end of the workout because it's something she's been working on. Well, the bike came up, the Echo bike specifically, at the very last workout of the competition. It actually is the only workout that she was in the bottom half of the field on because there were only 20 women left. So she took 11th. So, it looks a little bit, can be deceiving there. But she was way better than me on the bike. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah. But she's such, and I think most people here, if you have a chance to meet Ariel, please do. She's such a great person and she's genuine. What you see is her. She talks about her faith and it's great, but she doesn't push down on anyone. And I think that's also a great thing. And, she's a Texas mom that happens to be really, really fit. This video right here is amazing. I give kudos to CrossFit for shooting this and capturing the whole moment with her and her husband here, Dylan, at the end. So, yeah, it's great on her.
And by the way, look, Laura Horvath annihilated that workout. She beat the field by basically a minute. Ariel Lowen was second, and everyone that I spoke to who tested this workout, did this workout, Adrian Bosman talking about this workout, he's like, those last 10 pig flips are gnarly. Go read Pat Vellner's write-up about this and how he was almost cramping on every single one. She's not one of these big girls out there that should just be manhandling this thing. Her fitness is incredible. She managed that middle portion well to still be able to do her thing at the end. And look, she's not completely devastated crossing the finish line.
No.
And it was, the first workout, like I said, is whatever. When I saw her do that in this workout, I was like, okay. Like, obviously it's only the second, there's Dylan, by the way, it's only the second workout of the weekend, but that performance for her was kind of a light bulb going off of, okay, I got to keep my eye on Ariel this weekend. I still would not have put any money down on her actually finishing on the podium, but I did take notice of her when she did that Thursday afternoon.
That pig flip looked like her first pig flip. And watching that workout, especially heat before, I think had Annie and Emma Carey in it. And to watch someone like Annie, Thor's daughter, who's seen the pig probably more than any other women in the field, struggle with it. It was like, especially with her build and her strength, and then seeing Ariel just move that thing around. She probably moved that better than outside of Laura in terms of the pig. Let's move on to Gabby. Okay, so Gabby, I want to talk about her last 2 days as opposed to her first 2 days of competition, because the last 2 days of Gabby is the Gabby I think that we are expecting to see. And
five top 10, finishes, 5 top 8 finishes out of 6. Only the P bars, one being a 13th there. And I would say relative to her finish on the weekend, Gabby probably got the least amount of recognition of any athlete in the field.
100%.
You think about I would say maybe Dallin Pepper in 5th on the men's side is kind of on par because they were just kind of lurking in that 7 through 12 range for the whole time. And then they made a big push there right at the end and end up in 4th place. I didn't even realize she was 4th and had passed Kazan until someone told me about it. But keep in mind the things that we've said about what makes athletes great in this sport. It's how do you come back from adversity? How do you perform when everyone's tired? And Gabby's answering those questions very well here at the back half of this competition. We've been speaking about the age of athletes because you have to do it. She's only 24. Like, she's, in my opinion, is not yet at peak Gabby. Like, there's still room to improve. The next 3 years is probably when I would normally expect the best performances from an athlete on the female side. And the fact that she's knocking on the door of a podium here after having a little bit of a step backwards last year bodes really well for her. There were a lot of people in the off season wondering what she was doing. She'd left the training program that she'd been with previously. Well, the program is what it was. Her and Christoph kind of went out on their own. They'd done some travels. They were up in Iceland. Snorri wrote a nice post about her a day or two ago. If you want to go check that out, in fact, Snorri writes really nice posts about all of his athletes that give you a little insight, not too much detail, but a little insight into things about them that you may not know otherwise. And he really, invests in and cares about them each as individuals and as well as athletes. So I'd say she took some risk this year. I say they paid off. She looked amazing at semifinals. She won the European semifinal. That's not easy to do. A top 4 finish at the CrossFit Games is phenomenal. And I think she can, again, ride some of this momentum and confidence that they are making good choices, her and Christoph, as they push forward and continue to try to chase a podium and ultimately a CrossFit Games championship, I think is in her mind as a reality.
I think the scary thing, though, is I think it might have been on the Buttery Bros doc, is I think someone asked Laura what she was going to do with the money, and she said she's going home to build a gym for her, Gabby, and Christoph to work out in.
And members.
And community. It was, she said members too. I mean, how scary.
But she said that last. She said that last.
Yeah, but it's going to be a community gym. But for her to bring that back to Hungary to do that, I mean, that's going to be scary. I mean,
well, and Snorri mentioned this in his post, is that Gabby spent a lot of time training with Laura this year, and despite the fact that they have the same goal, they have found a way to make that work.
Yeah. And I think they've also found quite the home in Krypton as well. I talked to Gabby and Christoph about that, and they really enjoy that. Again, we brought up the whole Canadian training camp, but I think Ben is creating something really nice in Virginia, and it's based around community. So it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, that's pretty impressive. All right, let's talk about Alex. Good old Alex Kazan. Does someone? Woo! You put up a post. Her Kotler put up a post. It was a picture, I believe, of each putting out your hands with the showing 5.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I took more heat for my prediction or projection of Alex in 18th place than any other athlete. And part of that is because Justin and Kiefer are super good friends of mine and comfortable saying that. But, part of it is because I think a lot of people were looking at the fact that she won that semifinal. And unlike me, we're saying, beating Katrin, beating Ariel, that's a really great accomplishment. And she's going to be threatening for a top 10 at the games. I thought she was still 1 year off. Clearly that was not the case. Bike 18th, Big Chipper 6th, Inverted Medley 19th. Decent start, nothing great. Day 2, 3rd, 2nd, 8th. She really, kind of put the hammer down there. And then I was like, oh, damn, okay, she looks really good. Day 3, not that great. 19th, 11th, 19th, kind of fading a little bit more of what I was expecting. And then day 4, 2nd, 3rd, 16th on the final. So she had some ups and downs, relatively speaking, for a 5th place performance. But, Audrey, I was wrong a lot and I was right a lot. And it's, there's no one else that is really willing to put out the rankings 1 through 40 on their own. I do a lot of studying and analysis, but every CrossFit Games is different. And sometimes there's athletes that the program just perfect for. Sometimes there's athletes like BKG that are competing the whole weekend injured. There's a million different factors in play. And I don't really care if I'm right or wrong, as long as I feel like I've done a good amount of preparation and analysis, and I'm not just putting names in a random order based on, nothing at all. I love that the athletes prove me wrong. It's what makes the sport fun. In the cases where they're right, then, so be it, I guess. But I'm incredibly impressed with Alex. Justin did talk to me, and he said that he has been surprised himself with her adaptation, her work ethic, her, commitment, discipline, all the little intangible things that require a top 5 finish at the CrossFit Games came into the picture, I think, even faster than he expected. Look at that. She's only 21 years old.
22. Her birthday was last Friday, I believe. Just turned 22.
So they list the age based on the start of the CrossFit Games date, I guess, on their profile, not the finish of it.
Correct.
But
anyway, she's still young. Just turned 22, literally less than a week ago.
Yeah, and I mean, now the question is this the type of performance that we can expect regularly from Alex Kazan at a Rogue Invitational, at a Wadapalooza, Can she consistently win or take second place at a semifinal? And can she consistently, I'm not even going to say have top 5, but have top 10 finishes at the CrossFit Games? So much can change year to year. But you look at someone like Lazar Jukic, like Gabby McGowan, like Danielle Brandon, that are, they're not the same spot every year, but they're having consistent performances year in and year out that result in a top 10 finish at the games. And Alex has done that once. Now is the chance to look and see, can she start to do that consistently?
We'll move on from Alex. I mean, obviously, it's going to be great to see what she does. I'm going to be excited to see what she does at Rogue, because I think, knowing what we know about the Rogue programming, I think she will do pretty good in those. And she's just a hard worker. So Justin Kotler and the whole Underdogs camp, they have themselves quite the athlete down there, and it's going to be an interesting camp that I can't wait to go visit. We'll move on from Alex to Alexis. Alexis was one of only 3 women to wear the leader's jersey throughout the weekend. And I think she actually lost it and then regained it at one point. So, I mean, that alone shows me a lot, and just not her top 6 finish, because she finished in the top 10 last year, I believe. And 10th. And this is another athlete, I think, kind of like Dallin Pepper, that we had some expectations a little bit higher going into this year. So your thoughts on Alexis?
Yeah, pretty close to where I expected her to finish, a little better. I believe I had her 8th or 9th. And, she finished inside the top 10 on more than half of the workouts. That's always a really good benchmark of where your overall fitness is. And I think in the case of Alexis Raptis, if you look closely at her performances, you can see that basically squatting is the one thing that's kind of holding her back against the women that are beating her at the CrossFit Games. And she's working with one of the best coaches in the space, in Adam Rogers. The guy's a brilliant mind. He's a tactician. He also has a emotional capacity to relate to his athletes well. And he shaves his mustache for Sundays, I guess, at the games every year. So gotta give him some credit for that. But anyway, they will look at this performance. I think they'll feel really good about it. And I think they'll feel really good about the fact that there's some pretty clear things that they can try to target in this next version of their training. And that if she's able to make some improvements in those areas, that she has the potential to podium at the CrossFit Games in her career.
Yeah, I definitely see that. Moving on to 7, Katrin. What a comeback for her. I know the result isn't probably what she wanted, but I think at the end of the day, for someone who is kind of older, a lot of people kind of dismissed when she didn't make the games last year. What a performance.
Yeah, just so Audrey knows, is another one that I was pretty close on. And, it was a risky pick to pick her in the top 10. You're just not quite sure after, missing the games last year. Clearly she had a good semifinal performance. I did go and train with her for a few days up in Vermont, and I saw a tenacity and a determination, but also an element of fun that she was having in her preparation. I knew she was super excited to get out there and compete. She's one of these people, like, if you listen to her talk a lot, she's like, I just love to compete. And it's like, okay, we get it. But it's true. Like, she actually loves competing. I'll tell you just a quick story. We were doing a workout up there with biking and squat snatches. And I was using the women's calories and weights while, Jason Hopper and Jake Douglas and Steve Fawcett are slinging around the big boy weights and calories. And I said, Katrin, I'm going to beat you in this workout. And she was like, you are? I'm like, yeah, it's a great workout for me. And I know it's a great workout for her. And she's like, are you serious? She's like, okay, well then let's race. I'm like, oh boy, here we go. But like, she doesn't care who I am. She just loves the opportunity to compete. And she didn't do any interviews in the build up to the games. She was just wanted to enjoy her training, go there and put on a show. And I think that all the stuff that came out surrounding Katrin and Matt, who is obviously coaching her very closely this year, is mostly, despite this a 7th place finish, is a very positive feeling coming out of that, of the fact that she believes, again, that she's relevant in the sport. And I think that she's probably going to make another run at the top 10 next year.
Yeah. Moving on, we talked about Emma and her maturity level. I want to talk about the other Emma and the level of maturity that she showed, and especially in the face of adversity that probably most teenagers probably wouldn't have been able to do. So she started off her day, crashed early on, slipped up, finished 40th, dead last in the bike ride, which you would expect her to probably be middle of the pack, if not upper third. based on her athletic ability, her capacity, aerobic capacity, and whatnot. Bounces back with a 4th place. And then she has a middle of the pack 17th finish. And then she comes back with a 39th on that, which workout was that? That was the alpaca redux, where once again, which we've seen her do in numerous times in the last couple of years, she went out way too hot, or at least we think she went out too hot, and she just kind of fell apart. And I saw her after that, and I saw her back, and she was having a hard time. But luckily, her coaches and Torres and Dom were there, and I think they said the right things, and she was motivated after that. And what you saw the rest of the day, or the rest of the competition, was an athlete that we expected to see maybe 2 years ago. But it's just yeah. Go ahead, Brian.
I had this. I want to talk about Emma Carey. I do want to say one other thing about Katrin David's daughter, though.
Okay.
And that's that she took a top 10 finish on a workout with a lot of ring muscle ups on it. She put a post up specifically about this. And I know that there are some people out there that are really giving hard work pays off a tough time because of the finishes of Jason Hopper and Amanda Barnhart, for example. Sam Quant, who had a 10-spot regression or 11-spot regression from last year. But I know that those people have worked closely with Katrin on the ring muscle up, the technique, the execution, the breathing, etc. And that there's some, like, that performance was probably her highlight of the weekend. And it was, from what I know, it was a direct result of the work that she's done up there. I think that it is a dangerous game in general to look at one athlete's performance over one competition and suddenly attribute that to a negative aspect regarding any training camp or coach. There's always going to be some good with some bad. You're always going to take some risks that work out, some that don't. And that's just the nature of it. Anyway, so I just wanted to add that about Katrin before we get to Emma Carey.
No, I think that's a good point. And who else to learn from is someone like Matt, who kind of taught himself. I mean, what better coach is someone like him who's kind of created himself to being one of. I mean, he was, when it came to a ring muscle up workout, he was one of the top 5 in the world when it came to those competitions. So, great job by him and her. I mean, it takes a good student just as much as it takes a good teacher, especially a veteran athlete like herself, to kind of remake herself or relearn some old habits. So it's possible. So I wonder what other things they have in store where they're maybe rebuilding or remaking that will make her a podium contender hopefully next year. But moving on to Emma Carey.
Yeah, I mean, Emma Carey, she crashed on the first turn of the bike race, and by the time she was up and going again, I think she made the right decision of just to accept the last place. Yes. It would have been so difficult, and the only point she would have gained back would have been against someone else who crashed or had a malfunction of their bike. And if that happens, so be it. But what I know from people who rode that bike course is it doesn't matter if you were first or last. It was demanding on the legs and the body no matter what. Yeah. So and now think about being out there for 40 minutes, knowing you're going to do this entire workout and you're going to come away with nothing, with nothing to show for it except for tired legs. Yeah. That could be demoralizing. We've mentioned it several times because it is extremely critical. But athletes don't control the order of the events. That's something that crash is something that's out of her control. But how you respond to it is in your control. And the fact that she was able to have several things not go her way for whatever reason and continuously bounce back from that, she's under 20 years old. This speaks to a maturity and intelligence and an understanding about this sport that I think there are many athletes a lot of years older than her that are still lacking. And I think that an 8th place finish, given the way that the week started, is a very, very commendable. I think I'd picked her 6th, so she's right there in that mix. And if not for that, again, the points are really tight there. If not for that last place finish on the bike, she's only 57 points behind Gabby McGowan in 4th. Could she have earned 57 points on that workout absent a crash? I don't think so. I think she would have got a few less than that, but she's right in that mix, 5, 6, 7, something like that, with just a clean run on the bike. And yeah, you're right. She mispaced a few workouts. She went out really hot on a couple and wasn't able to hold on. Roman Khrennikov did that last year. He didn't do it so much this year. And I think that she'll go back and learn from that. I think that there's a lot of positives she can take away, way more positives than negatives.
Just below her in 9th place is our brute strength teammate, Danielle Brandon, who a lot of people were picking for a podium spot. I mean, I know some people picked her to win the CrossFit Games this year, and here she is at 9th. Obviously, that's a very disappointing finish for her. But what were your observations of her throughout? I mean, obviously she had some hits, home runs. Anything where it's inverted, she's going to be the best in the field. And then she had her last day, Sunday, was her best day. Finished 7th, 2nd, 8th. But there's a lot of finishes middle of the pack in between. Well, not a few middle in the pack, but
yeah, the thing is, like, she didn't really do too poorly on anything. She had two 21st place finishes right off the bat, and I think that for someone who, you know, and for someone who is thinking this, I'm in a podium this year, I could win this year, you know, and it's by all means, she could be coming and having that belief. That's a tough way to start. She backs it up with a win and a workout that's tailor made for her, and I don't think anyone was surprised that she won that. But you still have to go out there and do it. And so I'm thinking, okay, she has a chance to end the day with some momentum and come back on Friday and do something well. And you would think that, you know, that she would, you know, have potentially a good performance on the alpaca workout. She did not. The ski bag was a little bit of a concern for me because squatting has been an issue for her just because of the health of her back over the last couple of seasons. So I wasn't surprised with a relatively low finish there. And then, you know, Helena, I thought, well, this would probably be another good workout for her. It wasn't as good as I thought. So not kind of a lackluster day. And throughout the end of the weekend, I was just watching her. It was really difficult to tell from her body language if she was excited to be there, even to be competing or not. I mean, she did have a couple good performances, but those are the things that she, you know, when it comes to certain gymnastics things, she's just insanely good at them. So like second place on the parallel bar jump rope workout, not surprising. And like I said, on the handstand, but these other ones in the middle, I talk about this all the time. It doesn't matter where you are on the leaderboard. And we just talked about the margins for error. You know, if someone's saying Danielle's overrated, I'm sick of Danielle, whatever. It's like, well, I don't care about those things. What I care about is what's her potential here and how bad was this performance relative to what we expected. I think it comes down to her desire to fight for points in the middle of hard workouts, in the middle of a hard weekend when things aren't necessarily going your way. She's, you know, 50 points out of being 2 spots higher, 60 points out of being 3 or 4 spots higher on the leaderboard. And if she finishes 5th or 6th, people are saying, okay, well, you know, that's not a podium spot, but once again, she's up there near the top 5, in the top 5. And she could have easily done that. I think that with a little bit more mental toughness at some critical points in some of those workouts, she's a few spots higher on the leaderboard and people aren't necessarily writing her off. I'm certainly not writing her off. I think that, you know, just like most athletes, you got to, you know, figuring out how to mentally cope with things, regardless of how they go, is a big challenge in this sport. And when you add in the fact that maybe she hasn't been able to lift as much as she wants or squat as much as she wants over the last 2 years, you know, a finish like this is understandable, even if it's not maybe the best that she could have done.
In 10th, Paige Powers. I think that's she was an athlete. A lot of people still didn't know much. Obviously, she went out to Wodapalooza, won Wodapalooza, and then did really, really well her semifinal. But we didn't know what type of athlete we had in Paige Powers. But for her to come in 10th after an athlete who didn't make the cut last year, I think that's very encouraging for her and that whole Mayhem athlete family.
Yeah, I mean, I have mentioned that North America East women's field on a few occasions this season, and she was one of those 6 athletes that was well clear of everyone else in that competition, and all 6 of those athletes I thought had a chance to make the top 10. 5 of the 6 ended up doing it. Only Amanda Barnhart missed out. And, you know, for Paige Powers, I think this is a phenomenal step forward. You know, I actually put one of the kind of either ors I put out with Tyler Watkins and trying to promote the Heat 1 app prior to the games was, you know, Alex Kazan or Paige Powers will improve more spots over the course of this in this competition from last year. Both of them made tremendous jumps up the leaderboard of at least 15 spots. Alex did a little bit better, but the improvement from, like you said, 24th or 5th all the way up to 10th is extremely notable. I think Paige has had an incredible year, obviously winning Wodapalooza, great showing at semifinals, and a great showing at the CrossFit Games. Like many of the women in the field, super young, 20 or 21 years old, in case she had a birthday in the last week. And and setting herself up, I think, mentally, emotionally, with the needed confidence and belief that we're doing the right things, we're moving in the right direction. And, you know, there's no guarantee she'll be able to replicate a 10th place finish next year, but there's also no guarantee that she can't improve on it.
Yeah. The next 4 of the 5 next athletes are all athletes that didn't compete in individual competition last year. Some for 3 of them due to injuries. But Emma Tall, Emily Rolfe, well, I guess Emily Rolfe did compete in one event. But I mean, how big of a, especially for Emma Tall, Emily Rolfe, and Bethany Flores, how big of a win is this for them to finish so high after basically taking a year, or in Bethany's instance, multiple years off?
Yeah, I mean, Emma Tall, she was kind of the after what I thought would be. I actually picked as the top 3 women were Laura, Annie, and Gabby.
Mm-hmm.
Emma Tall was kind of the next woman out of Europe that I was wondering. Well, I should say alongside Karen Freyova, I was wondering if there was a chance for her to finish inside the top 10, and she came pretty damn close to that. This is, in my opinion, the best version of Emma Tall we've ever seen, the best performance at a major competition we've ever seen from her. It's really difficult to get into the top 10 of the CrossFit Games. And, she's amongst a field that we have been talking about over and over again as being super young. She's in her 30s and she's doing this. I know that this weekend was super special for both her and David Schranke, who finally made it to the games in the same year, got to compete there together. David got cut and was able to support Emma on that last day. She had a decent finish, 2 top 6 finishes out of the last 3 events, and she struggled on the parallel bars, but that's all right. So super happy for them. Grateful that I'm hopeful to see them when I'm up in Sweden in a few weeks, and maybe have a meal with them and get some perspective of what that week was like for them after they've had a little time to reflect on it. But great performance for Emma Tall, and honestly, a great performance for Emily Rolfe. This is the best finish of her CrossFit Games career. I mentioned that we'd get to it at some point. Not only is she 34 years old against a field of women that are on average 10 years younger than that, she's also a full-time nurse that, like Colton Merton, she's the one woman in the field over there that's working a full-time job and doing this year after year, showing up at the games and performing. I think she's on the beach relaxing right now, and she's definitely earned that. So great finish for both of them. Annie didn't do as well as I thought, but it's not to take anything away from her. She didn't really.
She still looked like she was enjoying herself out there and having fun. I mean, that moment that her and Katrin shared on the Olympic lift, just Katrin going over there and just kind of like hugging her before. I mean, she still had a lift left. Katrin did, but still went over there. That was a cool moment. But it looks like, I don't know. I think the competitor in Annie, she definitely isn't happy with how she placed. But I think at the same time, she doesn't take for granted her being there and competing.
No, and just a good lesson for the younger group of women to see is that, not every event went her way this weekend. Maybe some other performances weren't as good as she thought she might be able to do. She never let her get her down. She stayed in it. She continued to go out there, compete, have a great attitude. And I don't know this, but if not for what happened to Roman, she very well might have won the Spirit of the Games this year.
Mm-hmm. And I guess let's talk about Olivia Kerstetter. Finished 16th, the youngest competitor in the field, and she actually won Rookie of the Year. And this is something me and you discussed, and not taking anything away from her performance, but and I don't know if you got any answers for this, but how come Olivia Kerstetter? Obviously they went back to this year just having one Rookie of the Year, but she was named Rookie of the Year over someone like Hosta, who finished 10th, and it was in his rookie year. Do you have any thoughts on that or why that happened?
I didn't actually know this happened until maybe yesterday or the day before. When the final event finished up, there's so much going on. I ended up needing to go to the restroom, so I left the competition floor, and then I got caught up in some conversation back there. And next thing you know, I was blocked out from going back there as they staged all the podium finishers in the tunnel leading out to the Coliseum, which was fine. I had some great conversations, but I missed the award ceremony. I just assumed, based on last year, that the Rookie of the Year would go to the top finishing male and top finishing female, as it did the previous year. This now starts to enter into this question of what's Dave Castro's role and how much influence does he actually have? Like, is it possible that that was a Justin Berg thing to have a Rookie of the Year, one for each division, and that Dave didn't like that, so he didn't want to do it, so they went to one? Maybe, I don't know. Either way, and I think I've confirmed this with someone who would definitely know, this is the first time that the top placing rookie at the CrossFit Games did not win Rookie of the Year. And, 10th place compared to 16th place, we've talked about, like, that's a big difference. Finishing the top 10 as a rookie is amazing. Finishing 16th as 17 years old is also amazing. They both won one test at the games. I don't have any answers from the people who are involved in the decision-making process based on everything I know about the history of this sport, the sport in general, and this award in general. I have no explanation, and I'm, with this person saying this comment, no name, I was disappointed in Dave's explanation as to why they didn't do a male and Rookie Remodel of the Year this year.
So I don't know if you heard it, but during a press conference, it was asked, and he said, he gave a legitimate answer in my mind. He said last year was only the first year that they've actually split men's and women's. Prior to that, it was only given to one person. So he felt like there was no need for that, since they're trying to go back to how things used to be. And that's one reason one way of doing that is they just felt like they just needed one Rookie of the Year and not two, since it was a 1 year off thing.
Someone needs to push back on him then, because if you were going back to the way that you used to do it, you would give the Rookie of the Year to the top placing rookie, male or female, regardless. And that's not what was done. So I would say, great. I don't care if you're giving one or another. If you're not going to give it to the top finishing person, then I need an explanation as to why, because this to me doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. But again, we certainly aren't taking anything away from Olivia. For one, I was one that I didn't think that she would actually make the games, and she made the games. And then the question was, how well would she do against this games field? Because we saw her at Rogue. She had, I think she finished 18th or 17th at Rogue. Had a good finish to Rogue, the final event, and then she went to semifinals. She finished in a qualifying spot, I believe, 8th? I don't know exactly what's placed, but it wasn't a top 5 spot. But she comes in and finishes 16th. So great for her. And she looked like she obviously looked like she belonged. And I think having Jacob and the Proven crew there really helped her out with that.
Yeah. I mean, a 16th place at Rogue last year, 16th place here at the games. That was 16 out of 20. This is 16 out of 40. This is a great performance for her. I was super impressed with her at semifinals. I think I picked her not to make it as well. She made it. I picked her not to make the cut. It was one of the either ors I did with Tyler again in the build up to the games. And I thought it would be close. It was close. She ends up getting it. She ends up winning the last workout of the competition. She had 4 top 6 finishes over the course of the weekend, which is great. And if you look at what they were in, pig chipper, if it does come down to that pig, no surprise. Ski bag, 3rd place, one of the top squatters in the sport of CrossFit, obviously. 6th place on the total, understandable. 1st place on the last workout. And that last workout, she was lining up for it. I was like, damn, this could be like a Rogue repeat where she might win her heat and it might hold up. We don't know yet. And again, I still think Laura probably could have beaten this time if she wanted to, but outside of that, no one else was beating this time. And I have no problem, obviously, with her getting an event win here. This is great. Yes, Chris G. There is I just saw this come across my path as well. There is a fake account on Instagram that's trying to replicate my account. So if you guys see that and want to report it, that would be great.
Definitely. This question by one, thank you for the $4.99. We really appreciate the donation.
First ever live donation.
It is. It really is. So shout out to. I mean, if there's only a $4.99 bill, we'd print it out and hang it up in a plaque, like they do for businesses. But anyways, a question here for you, Brian. Maybe you can answer this.
Where is it? Oh, she was the youngest event winner as an individual. Correct. Maybe that went into voting. I think so. I mean, I think that's right. I never like to say that without being super 100%. Sure of it, and I would always check that against Chad Schroeder's records. But yeah, I don't think that would be enough to affect the voting. I mean, that's like the Rookie of the Year. This is the thing, is like it was never an opinion. It was just this was the best placing rookie. And now this year we've thrown this element of subjectivity or objectivity. What am I getting it wrong?
Well, we don't even know if there was voting. I know in other sports that I was involved with when I worked in collegiate athletics, they would have the media. They would hand out before the final event or the final heat or whatever for whatever sporting event we're covering, or the final quarter. They would send out these little ballots to all the media, and they would fill out who they thought were all conference, rookie, all defensive, stuff like that. So we don't know if there was even voting. Like I said, it could have been a decision of one person. But like you said before, it went to the top placing finisher. So there was really no question to that. So we don't know what went behind it this year. We will try to find out and try to get you an answer at some point. I know Brian has reached out to some channels, and we're just waiting to hear answers if we get an answer. But it'd be nice to know that going into next year and into previous seasons. So that way we can have explanations.
Yep. And the fact that she won the Rookie of the Year takes nothing away from her, from what she did on the competition floor. Amazing performance. 100%. And once again, we see Bethany Flores there. We see Olivia Kerstetter there. More women from the North America West that are doing very well at the CrossFit Games. So I don't think I gave that the region as enough credit as they were due.
Yeah. And I also wanted to bring up a point. Olivia, if she would have competed, this would have been her last year competing in a team division. We would imagine she would win that division. Gets $0 for winning the team division. It's the only division in all the divisions that competes at the games that does not receive a prize purse as the teenage division. Here she finishes 16th, gets a nice little paycheck, has an event win, another extra $3,000, and some other top 3 finishes. I believe she had a couple more. But good for her. Good decision by her. Great future in store. I can't wait to see what another year of proven does for her. I know that her and Sydney Wells developed a really unique and fun friendship. They're both Games rookies this year, which was kind of funny. I saw them in the warm-up area, and I asked Sydney, I'm like, is Olivia showing you where you need to go? Because Olivia, even though she's a Games rookie, she's been there before. She, as having a teenager, kind of showing her where all where the check-in area and all that is. It's kind of cool to see. And Sydney and her have a really cool friendship, and it's really cool to see that blossom.
Now, this 17th place finish is another thing that I'm going to try to get an answer to that I don't have an answer to yet.
Yes. With
Jamie Simmons, she withdrew from competition. Now, obviously, she was doing a lot better than 17th at that point. And as you see with the points that she has, 513, still would be enough to finish 17th. But if we go back 2 seasons to Brooke Wells had 792 points when she had that injury during the snatch with her elbow. 792 points at the end of the weekend would have placed 13th, but they have her listed 20th. So, and very much in line with this conversation that you're having about Dave Castro wanting to go back to the way things were. Here we have an example from just 2 years ago of the same scenario, someone making it to the final cut, having an injury, being forced to withdraw, and being slid down to the last remaining space, 20th. And now 2 years later, same thing happens to Jamie Simmons. She's not given 20th place from what I can tell here. She's given 17th. So I'm not exactly sure what's going on there or why that is different now, or if they're even aware of it, quite frankly. But that one caught my eye too.
Yeah, that I was wondering that myself because, again, you brought the example of Brooke. I thought that she would finish 20th. Speaking of Jamie, it was really disappointing to see her not. I mean, it was the right decision. She made the call. She withdrew that morning. A lot of people asked, and it was brought up in a press conference regarding, not giving Kelly Baker that spot. And the reason why Dave said is that Jamie had 24 hours. Well, had till the next morning to make that decision, and she tried it out that next morning and decided to withdraw. And by then, that was too short of a time for Kelly to be ready for that event, which would have been a really good story for Kelly because, again, she would have made the second cut again based off of withdrawal or someone not that she didn't deserve it, but anyways, Kelly obviously, she took her second life, almost made it into the second cut. A day after having a burger and beer, thinking she was done. So I don't know.
There's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot going on here. First of all, Jamie Simmons doesn't get injured. She probably finishes close to 10th, which would have been and I think I picked her 10th. That was a kind of a risky pick that I took. That looked like it was on track to pan out. I feel like she's one of these athletes that's like when it gets to the games, that's where she really has the capacity to show the full breadth of her fitness. And that's what we got to see for 3 days. It's funny because that night, I wasn't sure if Kelly Baker was going to make the cut or not. It was very close between 20th and 21st, as Shelby Neal ended up hitting a clean and jerk that was a super impressive to ultimately get that spot, and she had to hit it. So Kelly's 21st, and I was sitting right next to one of the photographers there, and I said, well, she's in 21st for now. We'll see if anyone else withdraws. Now, the difference between what happened with Ellie Turner and Jamie Simmons is that Ellie Turner withdrew at night. And Kelly and Jamie Simmons withdrew in the morning. And CrossFit's explanation was that they were still going through their process of scoring and whatever, and when they got that information, so it was not too late to reach out to Kelly and give her that opportunity. The fact that it even came close to happening again is kind of kind of ridiculous that it happened. But for Jamie, like, you don't know how that elbow is going to feel in the morning. So it didn't make any sense for her to make that decision the night before. And I don't think CrossFit did anything wrong with the way that they handled either one of those situations.
No, because she was able to come back and hit a decent clean and jerk. She tested the elbow. I don't know if many people saw it. Brian, you saw it, where after she did that, Elliot had her do a handstand to check the stability of that. And I thought was great. And she was able to hit both her lifts, I believe, or at least one of the lifts. But either way, I almost made a joke. I didn't get a chance to talk to Kelly, but if I was Kelly Baker, I would have showed up that morning. Just showed up and like, here, Dave, I'm here. I'm ready to go. I had my beer and burger last night. I'm ready to go. And so you don't need me to call. Just hang out. Just kind of annoy him, almost like, hey, I'm here. Instead of waiting for that phone call. I don't know if she did that or not. I would have did that, but but it was unfortunate for Jamie, because I think she would have did really well in that P-bar workout. That might have, like you said, maybe vaulted her into that 10th place showing. Another athlete I want to talk about. I know we're going really long on this, but I think for the 260 viewers, thanks for sticking around so long. But Paige Semenza, that's someone who just does not get enough credit. She was the last person to make it into the East semifinal. And she's another one of those athletes. She, I know we brought this about full-time workers. She is a full-time athlete, but she's also a full-time coach at her gym. She's the only level 2 athlete in this field that has her L2, which I think is awesome, because she teaches community classes. And I think, to my belief, I think her, Aunt Haynes, and I think Nick Matthew are really the only athletes here that actually coach classes on the side. If I'm missing anyone, please let me know. But for Paige to be an L2, I believe she's going to try to pursue her L3 to kind of pursue herself as a trainer. I just want to give her some love. She's just a great person. Those who are on this, you've seen her on Sevon. She is actually that person. She has probably the best eyebrows in the game as well. So, shout out to Paige Semenza.
And a great community. Got to meet her, some of her family, some of her coaches this weekend. It was really, really, they said some super nice things. Very passionate about the sport and appreciative of the media that's supportive of the athletes out there. Cool thing about Paige Semenza is that she has continued to improve her position at the CrossFit Games every year she showed up there. So four times to the games now, 32nd as a rookie in 2018. Obviously 2019 was kind of strange, but she did take 30th. Last year she was 21st, this year 18th. And even though it's not at the same caliber of what Jeff Adler's done, it's very much in that vein where if she's consistently getting better as her appearances at the games move on. And that's, that does not happen to every athlete. It's actually quite rare. So very cool what Paige has done.
Yeah. And then to kind of wrap out that top 20, we have Shelby Neal, who you referred to earlier. She's someone who just in the last calendar year has done amazing things. She just missed it because she couldn't do a legless rope climb. Just for a whole year, she made that rope her friend and just came out and just performed beyond expectations, at least for our standpoint. I think for her that she might have expected more, but good job by her. And of course, Alicia Fuliano, who continues to just be impressive. Just kind of under the radar. We kind of look at her as maybe a skilled gymnast, but she showed that she has an all around capability for CrossFit as well.
Yep. I mean, just making the top 20 is pretty tough, as we see some good athletes, Christine Kohlenbader, Sayar Kai, Amanda Barnhart, not making that cut. So, and that's a credit to Shelby and Elisa for sticking in the fight and for doing that thing that I talked about when we were talking about Danielle Brandon, is that in the middle of workouts, every workout at the CrossFit Games, for almost every athlete, there's going to be a point that comes in the workout where you realize these are the two people. These are the people that I need to focus in on, and I need to take those extra 2, those extra 3, those extra 4 points from them. And at the cut line, those are the points that matter. And the margins are always small at the cut line. And you could choose at any point in any workout to let those points go or to try to fight for them. Glassman has that famous saying from way back when that men will die for points in competition. And if you're not willing to do that and you're on those margins, you're going to find yourself on the wrong side of them.
I was lucky enough to kind of see that firsthand because I was in, as people know, one of the athletes I managed is Sahar. So I got to see her fight for that first cut where she went out there and just completely crushed her heat. She was in 23rd, I believe, and just completely crushed that Helena to get it there. And unfortunately, she was able to do that again. But Brian actually brought this up to me, and at Sahar, that's the highest finish by an athlete from the Asia region.
Other than Roman, highest finish for a woman ever out of Asia. Sung Choi was 26 the previous year, and so even though she doesn't make the last cut, phenomenal achievement for her and her coach that week.
Yes, yeah, very. You got to meet him. But we look at we go on the other side of the cut list, or the athletes that cut. Unlike the men. There's really not any names that kind of stand out outside of some injuries, but are there any athletes here worth mentioning or talking about? I mean, obviously we know Ellie had to withdraw due to injury. Bailey Rowell just, she's been amazing the last couple of years. Not the best finish for her. But besides that, there's a lot of games rookies. Matilda Garnes is another athlete that you might want to discuss, but a lot of games rookies that, this might be a case of them being rookies, and then next year, if they return, maybe a higher finish.
Certainly. I would say, just because you already listed them out, Kohlenbrander, Barnhart, Rail, Turner, Matilda Garnes, and Emma McQuaid are probably the veteran athletes that had a lot less success at the games this year than I was expecting. The reasons for those are varied, from some injuries in the case of Ellie Turner and Emma McQuaid to, some others that I'm really not quite sure. Barnhart ended up telling everyone that she and her husband have brought in a child into their care less than a month before the games, which is surely going to throw a wrench into all of those, daily and nightly routines types things. So that's a little bit understandable. But as we've been saying, the CrossFit Games are no joke. They're super difficult. There's a million different factors. And just because you had success one year does not guarantee it the next year. On the flip side of that, when you're asking about kind of surprise performances, even though these are bottom half, I look at Rebecca Vittesen and Abigail Doma and Caroline Stanley as having, and even Sydney Wells as having pretty decent performances here. There's only 40 points or so between those 4 athletes there in the mid 20s. But as I talked about with the men, it's so difficult for rookies. Most of them are going to finish in the bottom 15, and all of these did finish at the bottom 15, but they were towards the top end of that. They did survive the first cut. They had some notable performances, and even if they're not, amazing finishes on the leaderboard, just kind of knowing a little bit about these women and what their, expectations, strengths, and weaknesses are. Rebecca finished 17th in the lifting out of 30. But if you watched her lift, you'll realize that she hit the numbers that she wasn't sure she'd be able to hit or not. And, that's what you want to key in on an athlete like that who, even though it's not a great finish relative to the field, it might be a really important finish for her. And for these women here, I hope that they're coming away from this. I mean, I did see that Domit put out a post saying that I learned a lot, and I'm gonna take that back with me, and I'm going to come back better. I think that these women should have that belief. Absolutely.
And I think you see that in their second year is that confidence, just competing alongside. I mean, I got to see that with Sahar, who last year was a rookie, and this year she felt like she belonged. I mean, but and I think a lot of these athletes, Stanleys, the Abigails, Alexa Williams, I hope they do return. I hope.
And Chelsea Miller's got a great point here. She's talking about Olivia being young, but having what we would call a mature training age. She's been doing it for a long time, whereas some of the rookies that are older as rookies maybe actually haven't been competing in the sport of CrossFit as long, and there's a certain learning curve that comes with that also. She has this question as well: which rookie has the highest potential ceiling? I would say of the rookies from this year, you probably got to look at the ones that already are doing well. So I think it's difficult to identify a rookie in this field with more of a ceiling when you factor everything in than Olivia. And on the men's side, I probably would, I kind of want to lean towards Bailey Martin even over Yella Hosted, just as a younger, more well-rounded athlete that where Yella, I think, is always, if he can make it, he even said this, he said, it's more difficult for me to make it to the games than it is for me to perform well at the games, just the nature of the qualifying process. Whereas, and so again, in both cases though, the ability to qualify is going to be almost more critical than what their ceiling is at the games, because of the distribution of game spots, and that we're not exactly sure how that's going to look. I did see there were several donations coming in, which is so super cool and appreciated. Jessica B, €11.99, ironically fit, $5, and Jacqueline from Canada, 10, Jenny Sock, 10. So very, very cool.
Ironically fit. Yeah. I mean, this means so much. Just thanks. I mean, we got to see a lot of this love and support at the games. I don't think I told you this, Brian, but there's a couple times where I was sitting up in that coaches section. I would just look around, and I would see the tie-dye shirts, and it was just a cool feeling just seeing out in the crowd, just random tie-dye shirts. I forgot the coach. It might've been one of the coaches for the team. I'm trying to remember which team. It wasn't Omnia, but he was wearing the tie-dye shirts. Seeing our buddy Nico walking around, wearing our
media pit,
media pit with the tie-dye shirt on. I'm like, you're not working for us, Nico. You don't have to wear that. He goes, no, I like the shirt. And it was just really cool.
And you can't miss Nico.
No, you can't. He's the tallest guy in the media pit. So, so much. But to kind of go back on your point, I agree on those rookies. Another rookie, I think Caroline Stanley and Shelby Neal. I really like those two. I really think like Caroline Stanley has a lot. She's a former collegiate athlete, like a Division I softball player. I think she's just hitting the peak of her potential. She's part of that training camp. I think she's that new batch of CompTrain athletes that are coming that Jarrett Smith is really working with. So there's a lot of great athletes, and I mean, but like you said, it's not easy to get to the games. And someone like Yella Hoste, who's been around, who's been trying for so long, he recognizes that. And it kind of reminds me of I'm trying to remember the name of the athlete, the games athlete that struggles in the open.
Fikowski. I mean, part of
not
the world.
Fikowski.
Give me a clue.
No, who finished second in 2018 or third in 2018?
Hogberg?
No. Yeah, Hogberg is another guy. Yeah, he I think he said the same thing. It's like he didn't like the qualification process. He's more of a games athlete. So Lucas Hogberg. So thanks for that. Before we go, like I said, it's been our longest. Hey, Chad's back. And actually, perfect timing. We want to briefly hit, if it's okay with you, Brian, that we hit on the team division.
Sure.
So we'll switch over to the teams. And so all year, as soon as we heard that there's a super team coming out of Nashville and CrossFit East Nashville Proven, just about everyone. I mean, everyone has picked them to pretty much, it's them and then everybody else. Not quite the case when we got to Madison. What was your observations? Why was Invictus just overall just great?
Yeah, I think in a very simple sense, the difference between them and East Nashville Proven specifically was just their single modality monostructural capacity, running and biking. You just look at the ride relay, 2nd to 11th. You look at the cross country 5K, 2nd to 20th. And there was a workout on the last day, lift run relay. Oh, the lift run relays, 3rd and 1st, 1st and 9th. And then there was a workout on the last day, the bobs and drag. Was that the one that had the
bobs drag
2,000 more meters of running? first to fourth. So I think that almost, I think that was what you had to run, and then you had to pull the bob with the kind of like looked like you were rowing on a boat in the ocean. It was really actually a really cool visual from the aerial perspective during that workout. I didn't get to see it in person, but I was watching on a TV in the back as we were prepping for the individual finals, and it was really cool to see all the teams there kind of moving in unison and pulling that bob across the floor. But basically there was a lot of running, and there was that biking test, and Invictus was better than Proven on those tests, and they Proven was not able to make up the points on them on the other tests, which involve more of the synchro, teamwork, worm, kind of that CrossFit grittiness that East Nashville Proven is, I think, the best in the world. That, I mean, look, second place, first place, first place, first place, first place, second place, second place, first place. Those are event finishes of the second place team at the games.
Exactly.
The thing is,
it's crazy.
Where they were better than Invictus was still having top finishes, where Invictus was gaining bigger margins of points on the workouts that involved that running and biking.
I think it was the which workout was it? It was the muscle up bob. I think Peter White, me and Peter were watching, and Con, we're watching from the side, the end zone when this happened. And Invictus was solid coming out. Then Nashville just kept on chipping away. And that last round of the bob, they got to the bob before Invictus did. And they were at least 2 reps ahead, and Invictus just kept steady. Every time they dropped the bag, Invictus dropped it right back. They picked their like maybe a half second behind them. And then when it went down to the bob, Invictus sprinted to the bob, whereas Nashville kind of like I don't know. But either way, when Jorge and Joshua put their shoulder into the bob, it lunged probably a good like foot because of the power they're putting behind it. And that was ultimately the difference. And at the end of that, Invictus came from behind and won. And I remember looking at Nashville, and Nashville gave it their best effort, and the look in their eyes was like, what just happened? We should have won that event. And Invictus looked like they expected to win that event. And it was great watching that battle. And then you throw in Oslo Navy Blue the whole weekend. I mean, they were in second going to that last event. And again, just
13 points between East Nashville and Oslo Navy Blue. And Oslo Navy Blue now 3 consecutive podium finishes. Obviously, they didn't win their semifinal. There were some concerns about the overall health of the men on the team coming in the off season. There's some unknowns for them. But when it comes down to it, these are gamers from Norway. Like, they show up, they compete hard, and they do very well. And I think that, I did take a little risk on the team side. I picked No Shortcuts third. I think I Nashville Invictus, No Shortcuts, and then Oslo. But there's a difference between semifinals and the games, and Oslo Navy Blue showed that bit of class at the games that No Shortcuts did great, but wasn't able to keep up with the podium race.
Yeah, and it's crazy, but it was such a fun race. I thought the programming was on point. The last event, the handstand worm, that new earthworm that they introduced, what a game! Did you watch any of that? It was what a interesting when I was back there watching the first heat go, when they kept on showing Krypton, and watching Krypton with Ben Smith, Alex Smith, and that team struggle with it. It was like, what is that thing? And it was very interesting, and it's going to be crazy to watch the team division next year, because it looks like the top 4 teams will not be returning. Jorge made an announcement this morning that he's going to pursue his individual pursuits, and I imagine there'll be other athletes as well following that. East Nashville, we don't know. What I know, Nisler has told me that that this would be her last year. Oslo Navy Blue, I heard that they're disbanding as well, just because of life. Move Fast. You have Christian's retiring. This was his last year, so the team division will be very interesting next year to watch.
Yep, I thought it was a great competition this year. It wasn't clear. There wasn't a clear favorite. It wasn't a runaway win, even though Invictus was super impressive. There were many, impressive and compelling storylines. And the whole landscape of the team division will change a lot next year. In light of the conversation that we had earlier about how game spots are distributed, et cetera. I've already put out some thoughts and suggestions about using the team division as a testing ground for how to possibly do that within the context of just one season, which I think makes a lot more sense on the team side, even than the individual, which I also think it would be okay to do it for.
Chad, you had some skin in this game as well. Your affiliate CrossFit PCS, right? PSC. Where is it?
Yeah,
PSC
CrossFit
Invasion.
PSC Invasion is out of is the gym where Jack and Emma both train out of. So
yeah,
they did. I think it was their first games this year.
How was it watching them? Because I think you obviously know those athletes pretty well. How was it like watching them, and how are they after? How was their games experience?
Yeah, I talked to them at the awards ceremony. They had a blast. So Sean actually had a baby like the week before. So fun storyline that he basically his wife gave birth on the Monday and he was flying out the next Monday. So like that's a crazy storyline. And then Julie, she was a regional team athlete years ago back in the regional days, and both Nick and Erica have been like sailing through the semifinals. I think Erica was close to a spot to get to the semifinals. So like they had like, I think they were just kind of embracing the experience as like a first time team coming into it. They seem to have like a really enjoyable experience this year. And so they had a great cheering crowd there too to come support them, obviously supporting Emma and Jack too. So yeah, overall, I think they would come away with like a positive experience. Yeah.
So we mentioned this earlier about recognizing some of these other camps, and one of the camps that brought up is Mammoth Training. Is that the actual official name of it, or what did they call
that? Josh Woolley has Mammoth Training Methods, and so he has Jack, Emma. He has a master's athlete, Adam DeJong, that made it this year, and then he's all over Kitchener. So he's been kind of flying under the radar for the past few years.
Yes.
Obviously, with Emma and Jack making sort of splash last year and this year, I think he's looking to kind of. I think the attention will probably start coming his way. But yeah, he's been quietly building quite the team here. So exciting things for him.
Brian, outside of the, I know you wanted to talk about maybe some of the adaptive divisions as well, to kind of wrap up our coverage and age group as well. Again, Casey Acree just head above everybody when it comes to that division. Him pushing what the body, the limits of what the body can do when there is an impairment is just unbelievable. Watching, I was able to watch quite a few of the adaptive and a little bit of the age group, and every time I watch the adaptive, I'm just a complete awe and jealousy, and some jealousy because of the things they're able to do that I can't do. And being an able-bodied person in certain aspects of my life.
Yeah, I mean, I think big picture, it was for me, it was there, and for anyone who was there, I think it was really nice to be able to watch the adaptive and age group divisions compete on Tuesday and Wednesday without the distraction of the individual or elite divisions, team men and women. In this similar fashion, whether it was the young teenage athletes, the older masters athletes, the adaptive athletes, and then some of the younger masters athletes that are still doing just crazy impressive stuff. It was pretty much every workout, almost every heat, you were seeing something that was very, very cool. Obviously, the people at home didn't get the full coverage of that as they've had in some years past. And that's, kind of the bitter part of what was a cool experience for us that were there on site. So I'm hopeful that there'll be an opportunity for people to watch more of them in the future, because it is, like you said, it's pretty inspiring what these athletes are going out there and doing.
Yeah. Noelle Henderson, who is coached by JR, she won the multi-extremity division. I believe Valerie Cohen, I think that's her third title as well.
And it was a fight this year.
She's normally
gave her a run right down to the end, came down to a tie break.
Yep. Came down to that first place. The two first place finishes what actually won it. Well, oh wow, yeah, it's very close. Doesn't get closer than a tie, obviously, but moving on to the age group, like obviously the 35 to 39-year-old division, men and women, that's the premier age group division. We had let me get to it. on the men's side, we had Sam Dancer, who fulfilled his promise that he came up short with last year, of winning.
And proved Sevan wrong.
Yes, he did.
Sevan made the claim early in the season that Sam Dancer would not finish the CrossFit Games this year. So very well done for Sam. And man, it was tough seeing him last year, unable to compete. And yeah, he said that very early on that he would be back and he would do it, and he did. So that was pretty sweet. And on the women's side, it was a good battle. There were actually some really, really good races in some of the younger masters divisions. Lori Clement, who is well known for doing very well worldwide in some specific open workouts, hangs on and narrowly edges out 3 women who are nipping at her heels the whole weekend. Stacey Tovar, who you guys might have seen on the broadcast, Colette Casey and Amy Morton. So super competitive division there. And same thing in the 40 to 44 women, which I think Sam Briggs ended up winning, but Andrea Pinheiro, Jen Ryan, Rebecca Voigt-Miller, just, and this is what's happening in the masters divisions is, everyone's getting older, and suddenly there's these really big names, really talented athletes that are competing in more and more of these divisions. And again, I'm hopeful that there will be more coverage of that in a better way to watch, because, this goes back to my first CrossFit Games 2016 when I brought my dad there, and he was about 60 at the time, and he was watching people his age go out there and do things that in his mind were unfathomable for someone of that age to do. And although he hasn't pursued CrossFit, and certainly not competitive CrossFit, it did change the way that he approached exercise and fitness, watching peers of his, people of his age, go and do this stuff. And I'm now in the master's age myself, and we got a long way to go to match Giannis Papadopoulos' lifting total.
I think you have him at deadlift, don't you? I think don't you have like a 600-pound deadlift?
Dude, I think his deadlift is more than my total combined.
Probably. Jason Grubb winning the 45 to 49, which is also a tough division, and he's won it, I believe. I don't know how many times that's been for Jason. Just a good guy. He stays out in the RV park every year, so it's always cool running into him.
He's got 4 straight titles now. He won in 2019. There wasn't one in 2020, and then he's won 3 straight. So, and there are a bunch of, Chad Schroeder puts out the best stats on the age group records of all time, and I'm sure he'll have something coming out on CrossFits.com at some point here to recap all of that. But yeah, Jason Grubb is one of a couple. Susan Clark is another who have strung to get. She's now 6 for 6, undefeated at the CrossFit Games, 6 championships. The only person besides Tia Claire Tubing to win 6 championships as an individual at the games. And it's pretty cool that these athletes are able to do that. We talk about how difficult it is in the individual division to have consistency over time. The older you get, the more difficult that is. And what I really like about Jason Grubb is that he has a platform out there where he is trying to educate people who are, master's age, of ways to stay healthy and fit over a lifetime as well.
This division is going to be fun next year. Barring, this is the girls 16 to 17. So Lucy McGonigal wins the division after winning the 14 to 15 last year, and she wins it as a 16-year-old. Trista Smith finishing second. She ages out next year. She competed at the semifinal, did really well in a couple of events at the semifinal, West semifinal. Obviously, her training partners are Ellie Turner and Justin Medeiros, coached by Adam Neifer. But if you look at down these ages of this, they're all on the younger side. Besides Jenna, Haley Rolfe will move up, Riley Beebe. So this division is, if you want to look for the future of the sport in terms of the women's division, you have a lot of 16-year-olds who have another year in this division that did really well. Hayes Willard, Riley Beebe. But Lucy McGonigal is.
We've seen phenomenal women that come out of this division over, year after year at this point. The fact that Trista and Lucy are already qualifying for semifinals as individuals and, holding their own on certain workouts there is very impressive. On the men's side, or the boys' side, these athletes are not making the semifinals just because the depth of the field and just the general evolution process of a male maturing compared to a woman is different. But I trained with Ty last year at Mayhem when I was over there, and the guy is an absolute beast. So he wins it again.
Impressive.
This guy who's in second place, Hugo Jansen, popped on my radar a few months ago. I actually got a chance to speak to him and I think his coach or maybe his dad. I'm not sure. It's probably his dad because he had fiery red hair just like Hugo did. And again, I'm hopeful to meet up with him in Sweden. He's an impressive young man. RJ's, people who follow the sport for the teenagers will know RJ Mestra is a Wadapalooza winner. Caden Hogan, who trains there at Training Think Tank. These are, very, very talented athletes up and down the board in the 16-17 division. And the big question mark for them is what's next. And and if you guys have been following along, you'll know that I'm going to be at the Pitt Teen Throwdown later on this or early in the off season, and they have a collegiate division there. I don't know that any of these athletes are necessarily competing, but that's something that the Stephanie Price and Brock Yost are starting to try to create an opportunity for those 18 to 22-year-olds to have a place to go and train. It's like the thought of it is that these are like a college club sport or something like that, where you can certainly pursue becoming a pro and competing against the best in the world. But in the meantime, if you're not able to do it, we mentioned it with Dallin Pepper. He's the forerunner of a successful teenage boy athlete at the games who has parlayed that into success at the individual level amongst the elites. But he's 21 now, and he's fifth place. At 19, he didn't make it. That means there was a year or two gap where he didn't have a place to compete against his peers. And so hopefully that continues to exist for athletes that as they're making that process of jumping from teenage to individual.
Yeah. And kind of a cool segue from that is, Dallin Pepper is one of those athletes you just discussed. He has his own playing card. 20 years old, has his own playing card. And I don't know if you noticed this, but today was a newest drop from our friends at Wad Zombie. The newest Dallin card, yep. But the newest card has been dropped. It's Alex Gazan. So,
Wad Zombie made a little change of branding, so mint trading cards now, but same team, Tyler, Patrick, Nick, and myself, and we'll be trying to put out some cards for some different athletes and just giving them the recognition for their accomplishments.
Yeah. So here we're just gonna pull it up right here. So obviously, Mint, Wad Zombie, our buddy Nick over there, he does a great job with these. This is the Alex Gazan card. So pick one up. It helps the athletes. The profits go back to the athletes.
Could there be a better clip of Alex Gazan than a weighted legless rope climb with no shoes on, by the way, to represent her?
No, exactly. They're saying that's the brand. It doesn't get much better than that. So this has been, Brian, sorry to take so much of your time. This is 2 hours and 41 minutes for everyone that's stuck around. That's why. But
hey, you know what? Like there obviously are a lot of people who jump on it right away, immediate reactions from the CrossFit Games and want to do these breakdowns and whatever. I like taking a little bit of time, a few days to reflect, to think, to evaluate, to look at the leaderboard. So much happens during the week of the CrossFit Games. I think someone even maybe posted about or something that I made a comment to them about. I haven't had a chance to memorize the leaderboard yet, but it's like, there's only so much that you can take in as it's happening and then process. And even though, there are certain athletes that like I watched them do that workout, but I needed to sit back and kind of think about it and remember and say, oh yeah, that athlete in that workout did this thing or didn't do this thing, and it stuck with me. So hopefully just taking a few days to have a little bit more perspective for whatever Patrick was going to ask me.
Yeah. And by the way, I didn't know I was going to ask until I started looking at the leaderboard myself. I think all of us, I know I took like a whole day where I woke up and then moved to the couch and just laid on the couch all day. And then I did that like for half the day. The only reason why I didn't do 2 days is because me, Chad, and Brian had a call together, so I actually got out of bed for that. But it's back to work for the B.Friendly team. And speaking of the B.Friendly team, none of this was possible without the team that we compiled. So the content creators were please, everyone from Robert to Raphael, please follow and support them. We'll have something up shortly about how you can support them, whether it be a follow or whatever, and also supporting not just our media company, but other content creators across the space. We brought up the Buttery Bros. We brought up Sevon, who's working diligently behind the scenes. But it was a really awesome year to be a part of media this year. Chad more than anyone, because Chad was more a part of the media than me and Brian were. We're kind of playing we're kind of hands off, and it wasn't possible. None of it would have been possible without Chad's leadership and him just taking over. So, shout out to Chad for that. But yeah, before we sign off, again, go to B.Friendly and Brian's personal page. There's a contest. You have a chance to win some free shoes. The latest drop, the windbreaker drop of the Strike movements, just hot off the presses. Wait, Brian, you got one. Show the people what this looks like. Look at that.
Yeah.
Just in time for Labor Day. Got the white. I mean, it just says walking along the boardwalk of the East Coast or West Coast wearing those things. So, again, support us on Patreon. I mean, you've done so much to support us now, but if you want to help out additionally, please, we're providing new levels and new tiers on our Patreon. We also have our newsletter that Teddy Williams has kind of taken the helm on. So subscribe to that. It'll kind of give you an update of what we've been up to for the week, kind of a weekly recap of everything we're doing. And I don't know, is there anything else? Oh, Box Basics, again, thank you. They're wearing the shirts. Everything's been awesome about them. They're great. We hope to have a longer relationship with them as we look for new partnerships. As we got a lot of cool stuff planned. Obviously, having cool stuff planned requires some money and sponsorships and partners for that. So we're always on the lookout for that. So if you have any ideas, send our way. We'll be more than happy to discuss those. Yeah, I don't know. Is that everything, guys? What I missed?
No, that's great. Appreciate all the support. We'll have obviously some more stuff coming down the pipeline. I'm going to be hitting the road next week, heading out to Finland, and try to bring you guys some cool content about competition and community over there as well. Yeah,
Chad, do you have anything you want to say?
No, this has been great. Thanks everyone for joining, and thanks everyone for saying hi at the games. Looking forward to more events where we can kind of interact with the crowd.
Yeah. So, Brian, why don't you send it away for us?
If you do see that fake account on Instagram, report it. That is not me. Other than that, be friendly, our friends.